What caused a decades-long, stable marriage to end out of nowhere? Had to watch my parents go through the paperwork to get divorced after my dad had a massive stroke and was forced to retire. It was the only way for them to keep the money from his pension and maintain his health insurance coverage. My parents got a divorce of convenience so that Pops could make the mortgage payments and get his insulin. Thankfully, my parents' insurance agent is a close friend and found every possible form and loophole so that they could stay in the house together. It took almost 2 years to get everything settled. I'll never forget my dad's statement after it was all done. "The church says we're still married, and that's what matters to us. At least now your mother can still get her hearing aids and pay the mortgage if something happens to me." I was so disgusted with it all. I never forgave my dad's union for it, and we now make sure someone from our family shows up to their annual open meeting when they discuss the health insurance plan to shame them in explicit detail with how the board screws over the roughnecks. You know, my husband tried to kill me, which I feel is impolite. 23 years. I'd lied to her several times over the years and she always forgave me. The last time, I lied to her about accruing a severe amount of debt due to a gambling addiction. I think she might have forgiven the lie, but she couldn't forgive the addiction and the chance that I'd start gambling again. I started attending Gamblers Anonymous after I told her, but it was too little too late. On the plus side, I haven't gambled for almost 3 years now. It was a struggle at first, but it gets easier as long as I take it one day at a time. I've made some amazing friends in my local recovery community, and I run a meeting once a week to help others that are suffering. There's a guy in my town that everyone knows about because he owns this huge mansion in a middle-class neighborhood. Apparently, he was married to a woman for a long time, but she left him, calling him a loser because his business hadn't taken off yet. After she left him, his business finally took off. He sells medical equipment to hospitals, and he became FU levels of rich in a few years. The reason he built the mansion in that neighborhood was because that's where she lives, so she has to drive by the mansion on her way to work every day. The script that I'm gathering people's answers for after this one that I'm currently writing is about people's acts of petty revenge, and for a second there I wasn't sure if I'd pulled from the wrong group of comments. This is brilliantly jerky. And if they really were married for 10 or more years with her patiently waiting before it came together for him before finally throwing in the towel, this must have been incredibly frustrating. My mum filed for divorce after 27 years with my dad. Us kids were out of the house, and I think she had a midlife crisis that if she decided to do nothing, then that's how she'd die. In that house, doing nothing but things that make the days go by faster. I do believe an old high school flame helped her make the decision as well. At first I was hurt, but as I get older now, I completely get why. My dad prefers routine over excitement and had a habit of saving us poor when we didn't need to. At first it was a financial requirement, and then it became an obsession for him. My mum wanted to travel and experience new things in her later years, and she deserves that. My dad deserves to live how he wants to as well. Today I see 2 happier people, and that makes me happy. My parents got divorced after 22 years of marriage. They were never in love and didn't even like each other. They had me and then my sister a few years later and wanted to stay together for the kids. 12 years after I was born, they had my brother, and that kept the cycle going. I wish I could say that they're happy now, but they still like to cause trouble for each other. We're due our first child soon, and they're going to have to figure out how to be grandparents together. Thankfully, I'm 1,500 miles from them, so it won't be a headache very often. I worked at a law firm that only practiced family law, so we're talking divorces, child custody, wills, and estates. At one time, we had like 8 clients getting divorced after 20-plus years of marriage, and they were all high-ranking military men whose wives came out of the closet after all of their kids had grown up and moved out of the house, and these guys were getting ready to retire. I thought it was so weird, but I guess for whatever reason, the women thought that their duties to their husbands and families were coming to an end and they wanted to live for themselves. I guess I know why they couldn't come out 30 years ago. It was a different time, but I was curious why they were all attracted to military guys. I assume maybe because it meant their husbands would be away for years at a time during their service? I think it depends more on how old the women were when they were first married. Military people often tend to marry young and quickly. You don't know yourself when you're young. 20 years will do that to you. My parents split up after nearly 30 years. My dad was a butthole my entire life, so when they finally divorced, I was 18, and there was no surprise. He had been cheating for years, and I think he was the one who finally asked for it. I think my mum stayed because she couldn't afford to start over. She spent her life putting my dad through school and wasn't educated herself. She had no family or anyone who could help her either. There were definitely some confidence issues on her part as well. My parents divorced when I was 12. They thought I'd be devastated, but the only thing I could say was, "Thank God, what took you so long?" I don't think I could have endured it 6 more years. My husband began surreptitiously going to exotic dance clubs. He stole about $200 a week from various accounts and a business that I owned to fund those activities. He lost his job because he went there so often at lunch and would just stay. We had young kids, so I stayed after he got some therapy. He was never honest with the therapist. About a year ago, I learned he was doing it again. Plus, texting the exotic dancers. My youngest kid graduates high school this year. I've done what's best for everyone else for 20 years now. This September was 21 years, and I don't anticipate having a 22nd anniversary. It's really scary to think of being alone. I don't hate him. I feel sorry for him. I know he'll feel very sad and lonely when I'm gone. But being near him feels like having my soul ripped from my body every day. Therapy changed my mind. After more than a decade of being miserable, I finally got help. When I was able to really talk about my marriage was when I finally realized I needed to get the F out. At the end of the day, I stayed in a crappy marriage because the thought of being alone scared me. Through therapy, I was clued into how many wonderfully supportive friends and family members I had if I just reached out to them. I wasn't going to be in a relationship anymore, but I wasn't alone either. Not myself, but my parents. They were married for 22 years when they separated, 24 years by the time the divorce was final. From the perspective of a child in the situation, there's no way that they were happy together. There was hardly ever a quiet moment in the house because of my father's temper, but my mother knew how to serve it back too. However, the final straw was more of a chain of events. My father had a very rigid view of the family. Man works, woman stays home, cares for the home and the children. When I was in high school, my father got injured at work and needed surgery. He worked a physically demanding job and would be out for 6 months. My mother, knowing that we were already falling behind on the vehicle and house payments, decided to find part-time employment. She worked while the kids were in school. It was still important to her to see her kids get on the bus and be there when they got home. My father immediately believed that she was cheating on him. He installed a tracker and tape recorder in her car. He showed up at her workplace and caused a scene multiple times. He interrogated her co-workers. He spent most of the time at the house drinking. This was not an equal partnership, and it never really was. You should have seen how hurt he acted when my mum finally asked for a divorce. But he rebounded real quick, let me tell you. All he had to do was tell some woman on Plenty of Fish his sob story, and he moved right into her house. He spent a couple of years treating her and her children horribly before she kicked him out as well. Only took him a couple of weeks in a hotel to find another woman to let him move in. What a charmer. Nasty controlling dirtbag aside, I'm mainly mind-blown that Plenty of Fish was surviving as a dating app when that comment was written in 2019. I only had it for a while when I had my garbage Windows phone before Tinder finally became available on that, and Plenty of Fish was dead in the water like a decade ago. Maybe that's why Rebound number 1 was so starved for choice in his story. This video is not sponsored by Plenty of Fish. That last guy sounds like my grandpa, except when he started drinking and accusing Grandma of cheating, he beat the crap out of her. It all backfired one day, though. Grandpa had 7 sons, all really good wrestlers and boxers, because Grandpa thought men should know how to fight. One day they ganged up on Grandpa. They were between 8 and 17 and they beat the crap out of him. They tied him to a tree and left him outside all night. Then they told him they'd kill him if he ever drank or hit Grandma again. It's crazy to me because I only ever got to meet the nice version of Grandpa who didn't drink. Parents divorced after 25 years when my mum had what we thought at the time was a midlife crisis. She told my dad by draining $3,000 from the joint checking account to fund her divorce lawyer. 6 years later, they were officially divorced since she blew through that money on different lawyers that kept firing her as a client. We later ruled out midlife crisis when her behavior started to become more odd, erratic, and paranoid. She was in her early 50s when this behavior started. Now we, by whom I mean myself and my sister-in-law, both of whom have psychology experience, think that she has late-onset bipolar, and I say think since we can't get her officially diagnosed since she believes nothing is wrong with her. She lives in New York and it's super hard to commit someone there unless they're a danger to themselves or other people. And she's not dangerous, she just can't hold down a job and lives in her car due to her own insubordinate, sporadic paranoid behavior. But of course she blames everyone else. No, she's not a narcissist, she's just mentally ill, since she was never like this when we were growing up. She was very selfless and caring when she was younger. We were together 20 years, married for 15. We started as high school sweethearts, but we eventually realized that we weren't the same people we were when we fell in love. We also realized that that wasn't going to change. we decided that the best way for everyone to be happy for the rest of our lives was to end it on peaceful terms before we were both 70 and resentful of each other for trapping each other in an unhappy marriage for more than 40 years. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I've been married for 20 years and we are on the edge. The answer is that life just changes you. When you start out the relationship, it's its own thing, it's cultivated and it grows. Then over the years you add some children and full-time jobs and there's less to cultivate, or nothing. You end up becoming life partners to run the household and you wonder why you're even together. Since there are no good times, all that's left are the arguments and bad times. This is all normal, and on top of that you're both going through the personal struggles of living. To be honest, staying married is tougher than most people think in an age without divorce social stigma. The kids do keep you together, hoping that somehow you can rekindle something that once existed. And this isn't a situation with two good people trying to do the right thing. We're not even talking about a toxic situation where people are mistreating each other. My dad filed for divorce after 25 years of marriage. My mum was shell-shocked. My dad was absolutely miserable, but the signs of a failed marriage were always present. Dad was very emotional and is quick to anger. He's never really handled failure very effectively and would be mad instead of constructive. My mum is very family-oriented and was adamant that we never move farther than 40 miles from Chicago. Heck, when I was going away to college, she bawled to my dad to force me to go to a school closer to home. In a way, I think my dad resented my mum for never letting him travel or get away from Chicago. It also doesn't help that I'm fairly certain my mum became undiagnosed depressed once her mum died. All she'd do was her bare minimum at her job as a school bus driver, then come home and sleep, finish her route for the day, cook a hamburger helper meal for the family, and then play Angry Birds on her iPad. It's really weird seeing your parents divorce in your 20s. You're adult enough to speak candidly, and neither of them likes what you have to say about them during or after the fact. The silver lining out of it is my sisters and I know how not to behave in a relationship. We were together for 20 years, but only married for 13 of them. Our interests just diverged over the years. I got more into music and art and wanted to go to festivals and stuff, and she wanted to F her boss. I'm very grateful our attempts to have kids failed. It's much easier to make a clean break that way. Not me, but my grandmother once told me that she was considering divorcing her husband of over 50 years. The reason she gave me was, "We stayed together for the kids, and now the kids are all grown up and have lives of their own. And now I can't ignore the small things about him that annoy me." She didn't go through with it, but she seemed sincere when she said it. It broke my heart, especially since I only ever saw the best side of him. My mum left my dad on their 30th wedding anniversary. He had been in and out of rehab 3 times at that point and couldn't commit to quitting drinking. She couldn't stay and watch him drink himself to death anymore. Didn't get divorced, but started the process after about 25 years. Then we stuck it out for a few more years after the kids, and I ended up falling in love with her after the kids moved out. Relationships follow cycles, so I'm glad that I stuck it out. I thought I'd pop in a little bit of sunlight amidst all the divorce, although I guess that's not to say that divorce isn't just objectively the correct decision for some relationships. If there's one thing we're seeing a lot of here, it's often that both parties and the kids would sometimes be better off with the partners no longer together. I'm glad it worked out for this last commenter though. She cheated for years, plain and simple, ended our 22-year marriage. To be honest, I don't even want to work through it. Now that we've separated for a while, I realize how toxic she had become, and I'm a much better man without her. My dad had multiple affairs, and my mum got tired of it. There was also the alcoholism and the fact that both parents were workaholics. My dad remarried a lovely woman, and so did my mum. Oh, that might have been an issue too. This lady I work with, her and her husband had been married almost 30 years. They had 2 kids, both in their mid to late teens, and a full life together. She was the stay-at-home mum, and he made the big bucks. Anyways, once the kids both started to grow up and stop wanting to go to the cottage, they realized that when left alone, they didn't have too much in common. Then the kids started leaving for school, and I guess things just got worse. I think everything would have been fine if not for the father's dad, the grandfather, getting sick. Turns out the old man had near $4 million to his name and was giving all of it to the father. So, Dad consults a lawyer who says that since it's an inheritance, if he's divorced before he gets it, he can keep all of it, and as such, he divorces her within days. She stopped working for us shortly after, but I know it was really hard on her. She got her fair shake of the currently owned assets, but couldn't touch the $4 million. I should say that there's no world in which she should deserve the entire sum or anything. Do I think there's grounds that maybe she should get some of it? I don't know. I guess you'd need to know the relationship. What if the grandfather was sick and lived with them for 15 years during his sickness, and as such, she was his primary caregiver? Would that have entitled her to monetary compensation? Again, I don't have the answer, but I don't believe it's ever an easy answer when things like this arise. My parents got divorced because of my dad. We grew up in a military family and Dad was always deployed. My mum was a walking medical disaster, no offense to her. RA at 23, endometriosis at 24, got a hysterectomy and everything. They married early and had kids really early as well because of the endometriosis. My mum tried to cater to my dad and make sure he could still live his life in his mid-20s because they had kids earlier than expected. Well, being deployed all the time meant that my dad could just F around with ladies off in other places. My mum stayed home and took care of us. Dad got a divorce when he got back and got remarried like 3 months later. That lasted 2 years before she got her green card and then ditched him. My mum still loves him despite him moving on to his third marriage, having another kid, and never actually paying his portion of child support. So pretty much they got divorced so that my dad could have a younger, more subservient wife. Ugh. My grandparents initiated divorce proceedings a month after my dad, the youngest of his siblings, graduated college. They'd stayed together to provide a stable home for their children, and once they'd all left the nest, my grandparents were ready to move on. My grandparents met and married in the 50s. Super Catholic family, 6 kids in 9 years or thereabouts. Husband worked, wife took care of the family dynamic. It was honestly a lot of little things that my grandma eventually got tired of first. First trying to wrangle her 3 boys, all with difficult personalities, to church, so they stopped going. Then it was the things he did like not helping with the difficult kids, which he saw as woman's work, not helping with the household chores, because that's what kids are for, being emotionally distant, he's a man and didn't do emotional stuff, and from the way my grandma tells it, she stuck it out so long because she thought that's what a good Catholic woman did. Be long-suffering and patient. It wasn't until she started exploring outside of Catholicism that she decided she'd suffered long enough. The divorce ended up being civil and mutual. Grandpa was never one for causing a scene, you see, and both of my grandparents ended up in loving, understanding second relationships. Neither of them remarried officially. Funny random side note, when I graduated high school in 2012, my mother invited both my grandparents to the graduation. By that time, they'd been divorced for longer than they'd been married. 20-odd years together and 30 years divorced by my math, and they didn't even recognize each other until after the ceremony. My dad was very vocal that he was staying because of us kids. His dad abandoned my grandma and their kids when he was really little. He had never forgiven his dad and was determined not to do the same thing to his own kids. While I admire him for, quote, doing the right thing, I'm a little resentful because all they ever did was fight, because he couldn't quit screwing around and it was unbearable being around it. My man killed the dog. She was getting older, and if left alone for more than 7 hours, she'd pee in the basement on the cement. I'd check daily and mop if needed, but we were in the process of buying a new house, and he decided she wasn't coming with us. Rather than discussing it with me, he took the easy route and made her disappear while I was at work. Having to console my young sons that evening and seeing her trauma was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. My heart closed to him instantly. My parents were together for 24 years. My dad left my mum after his best friend, who was 6 years younger than him, died. My dad went into a depression about his own life and left my mum for some witch at his work because he felt like he was missing out on life by being with my mum. Probably a little unfair to just slander the person he ended up with, although I guess we're missing a lot of context here. Maybe they cheated, maybe she sends you all personalized hate mail every day, but based on what we have here, we can't just decide that she's a witch. 21 years together with my ex, only married for 16 though. We both had a non-loving home situation, so maybe that drove us together. We bought our first house when we were 3 years together, and since then, there was always the fear of being left alone. Leave the other one and myself in debts. We bought a second home, sold the first one, had kids, lovely twin daughters, and bought a third home. We sold the second one. But my wife still wasn't happy with life, and this all pushed down on me. There was no affection between us. Also, I was very insecure about myself. I thought women didn't really like me. But then my eyes opened, I started doing yoga, went to a therapist, and after a year or two, I felt secure enough to make this really heavy decision. The toughest part was for my daughters, who were 9 back then. I really quickly met someone new, and after her, someone else. So my complexes about my looks were completely gone. I started a new life, my kids are okay with it now. It was the hardest, but also best decision in my life. Also, my ex had it really hard. She didn't see it coming, although she told me several times she wanted to divorce. She blamed me for everything, but now she also has someone new, and mutual friends are telling me she's happy. So I think for her, this was a good thing after all. Some couples just grow apart. After 20 years, you're two entirely different people. It's hard to stay together. This is the general answer. Yes, people stay together for kids a lot, but overall, this is the root of the answer. People just change over time, which is good. Growth is good, you just need to make sure you're growing together. It's part of a healthy relationship. I think when we talk about relationships, we tend to generalize them and not talk about how much commitment and hard work they are to keep going. But rather, we like to talk about the good side of it, which is why we work so hard. I'm just shy of 25 years with my wife, and while I love her and can't imagine ever being married to another woman, she's driven me crazy enough to think about divorce multiple times. But my commitment to her, those funny vow things, means that that's never really an option.
What's the weirdest thing that you've seen at someone's house that they thought was completely normal? Their mother cooked 5 different dinners from scratch every day. They each decided what they wanted, and she just cooked it for them, all 3 children, husband, and herself. When I went round the first time, she seemed insulted that I didn't want anything special and just had what my friend was having. It must have taken her hours, as they all chose to eat at different times as well. Not the weirdest, but I always ate one meal with my whole family. 12-year-old me was out of his comfort zone. I mean, I don't blame you, but you know what? 30-year-old me is going to just go right on in and order. Oh, shucks. Order me up a side of ravioli and flapjacks. Oh, yuck. Rather than a garbage can, my friend's family had a room to throw away their garbage. A room that served no other purpose than a garbage can. I asked him what they were going to do when it was full, and he just said it wasn't their problem because they were moving in a few months. Even if you're moving, wouldn't you rather not have rotting piles of garbage in your house? Response: worked demolition on a house that was used in the same manner. Required jumpsuits and masks for the biohazard that was once a sunroom. Well, I guess you can say that is a place that the sun no longer shines, and it probably smells like one. Yep! I went to someone's house where, no joke, they wouldn't flush the toilets until they were at full capacity. The entire top floor just reeked of wastes. It was disgusting. Edit, follow-up. One time, I saw them scooping the waste into a bucket and throwing it in the backyard. I wish I was joking. When playing on a console in the lounge, when there was a scream, and his little brother ran past, 12-ish, followed by his birthday suit little sister, 14-ish, screaming at him. Apparently, he keeps creeping into the bathroom to watch her shower. My friend and his parents thought it was hilarious. None of them seemed to find it weird. And no, there was no lock on the bathroom door. Not sure why. I had a best friend all through elementary and middle school. I was over his house practically every day. One day, his mom gave him a meal of cooked spaghetti noodles in a bowl of milk and gave me one as well. It was the strangest meal I've ever seen. He loved it. I did not. Hung out many times after that and never once saw him eat a bowl of milk spaghetti. Messed up. Response: macaroni, milk, salt, and butter. It was an ordinary dish in my area in Finland at the war times. When proper ingredients were rare, my grandma made it for my mother and my mother made it for me. And I still love it. My friends think it's weird. It's so easy and fast to make. I always make it when I want something warm, fast. It's called macaroni, macaroni soup. My childhood friend invited me over after not hanging out for a few years. We were both teenagers. We got on the subject of sealing the deal, and she pulled out a little shoebox from under her bed. She had saved every spunk-filled naughty balloon from her and her boyfriend, tied in a knot and in a pile of about 50. I didn't know what else to say, so I was like, cool. Went home shortly thereafter and didn't speak to her again. Maybe I was too harsh? Maybe not. I have to admit, with all the comments following this story in particular, for some reason, everyone jumped on the idea of pirates, as if the shoebox was a treasure trove, like if they were looking for this. Hey, yarg! We be pirates of the vast seas to find all the treasure we could know. Oh, no. "Me hearties, turn around. These be cursed waters within this bedroom. Run! Run, boys! Ha 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 ha!" I stay at my best friend's house a lot because she still lives with her family, and it's kind of nice being around them. One time her dad left the door open while he was taking a dookie, and as I walked past, he just nodded hello at me and continued reading his newspaper. When I told her about it, she just shrugged and was like, "So?" Edit. I am a dude, so maybe he was just showing me who's boss. You know, I did actually have a certain comment for this, but I think this response from Cheeseburger Waffles is exactly what I could imagine. "My dad did this once while he had horrible diarrhea. I was like 6 or 7. I just saw it out of the corner of my eye while walking past. Heard some blasts. Kept walking. I just kept walking." My dog died a few years ago. He was a beloved member of the family, and we were all pretty torn up about it. My mom and dad decided to have him cremated. A few weeks later, I came home from college and saw the urn, right in the middle of the coffee table. I said, "Mom, is that the dog?" And she said, "Yes, dear." And then my dad shouted angrily, "He likes to watch TV!" Bugs. I was at this girl's house once for a sleepover party when I was a teenager, and there were bugs, and she thought it was totally normal. It started off with ants in the living room. Everyone was grossed out. Then, when we were all going to bed, one of the girls found a tick on her pillow, and the girl whose house it was said, "Oh yeah, they come off my dog all the time." Last time I went over to her house. The house was mine, and I thought this was completely normal until later on in life. A little backstory. My family went to Catholic church every Sunday. Other than just going to church, our family wasn't really that religious. Every Friday evening, we would go grocery shopping, the whole family. One Friday night, we were in traffic, and a motorcycle flies by and clips the side of a vehicle. The girl flies off the back, and the guy's leg ends up being caught in something and twists like 8 times. I was 8 years old when this happened, and remember it like it was yesterday. Well, my mom runs into a nearby business to call 911. This was way before cell phones, and they clear the accident. On our way home, my dad says that we were going to say the rosary. If you're Catholic or religious at all, you know about the rosary. It's prayers that you repeat over and over and over, etc. Thinking that would be the only night that happened, my dad decides to say the rosary every night. At 6 p.m., we had to be in the living room, on our knees, and it lasted for an hour. Then we'd eat supper and get ready for bed. This went on for a long time. I had a friend over one night. We were playing video games in my room when my dad came to get me for the rosary. I told my friend to continue playing games until I come back. Nope. My dad said he had to participate. My mom told my dad in private that he couldn't make someone else's child participate in the rosary. My dad was dead set on my friend doing the rosary with us. My mom ended up bringing my friend home, and no one from my school wanted to come to my house after that. This is too buried for more than 3 people to see, but I've got to get this off my chest. It's something about my own house, or rather my parents' house. You know how parents will have a shrine of their children's pictures over fireplaces, bookcases, on the refrigerator, usually showcasing their beautiful children throughout various stages of development, school pictures, prom pictures, etc. My parents had a few of those scattered throughout the house. There's 5 of us kids, but only 4 kids are showcased. I'm completely absent. I didn't notice this till my late teens. Girlfriends would ask, "These baby pictures are adorable. Which one is you?" None of them are. When questioned, my parents stated, "We just don't have any pictures of you." Fast forward to current times. I'm in my mid-20s, live on my own, and my parents are divorced, each living in their own respective homes. One shrine is now divided into 2 shrines in 2 houses, still only featuring photographic evidence of 4 out of 5 children. Again, I am left out. Again, when questioned, "I just don't have any pictures of you." Both parents retort, "I'm not adopted. I'm the middle child. I'm the intelligent, clear-headed one. My role in the family was the mediator, the communicator, the problem solver, the teacher. I'm also the only child that did not rebel against his parents' authority. I'm not going to say my parents don't love me, but I can say that they didn't bother keeping any picture of me. Had, keyword had, an overbearing friend who constantly needed attention. Finally go to her house for the first time and find out she lets her ferrets run around their single wide and crap everywhere. There were also dirty clothes piled in every room. Oh, the ferrets like to hide in it. I like animals, and I had never really petted a ferret. So I reached down, and the thing is crawling with fleas. Literally, there was almost no patch of fur that didn't look like it was moving from all the fleas. She noticed me cringe and said, "Oh, don't worry. I think he thinks they are snacks. He's always trying to get them with his mouth." No, B. Your ferret is probably getting bitten left and right and itching like crazy. Little late in the game, but why not? I was about 9, and my family went on a trip with one of my friends from school and his family. They're nice enough people, but had weird mannerisms and were strangely formal. Anyway, the one weird thing I noticed was that every now and then they'd each go out of the room for a moment and come back in. Thought nothing of it after a while and kind of forgot about it. One night the kids were chilling in the bedroom while the adults were in the lounge. A few cold ones were had and they got a little merry, and allegedly, by mistake, my dad rips a huge fart. The scream that came from my friend's mom was blood-curdling, and everyone kind of rushed in to see what had happened. She got really embarrassed and explained that they never passed gas in front of each other. It was a little awkward after that, but pretty funny. Well, I mean, yeah, wow. They're just like chilling on the couch. Oh boy, I can't believe it. You, me, and the kids, and we're just having a great... Oh my God! I'm sorry, just can't help it. Just went a little toot-toot, and there it is. Boom, there it is. Hey, Peter. My grandma's neighbor had a daughter who was my best friend for a few years growing up. They had a nice house with nice bedrooms, clean, always made beds, because they all slept downstairs in the living room. The dad on the couch, mom on the love seat, and the kids on the floor. All we did was play in her room, but if I spent the night, on the floor I went. What is this, Oliver Twist? Please, sir, may I sleep on the bed just once? No, now dance for me. I went and stayed for dinner at a friend's house during high school one night. Getting ready to eat were friend's dad, friend's mom, friend's older brother, friend, me. Count 'em, 5 people. Friend's mom walks out with dinner. It's like a big bowl of steamed veggies, which looked fine, and a plate with a piece of steak and like 2 pieces of grilled chicken. The plate hit the table, and everyone but me lunged for the meat. It was freaking survival of the fastest. It was like when a pack of dogs get a deer. 5 of us at the table, 3 pieces of meat. At my house, Mom served dinner all portioned up in portions proportionally to how much each of us eat. Which I guess might seem weird to how they ate, but it was the weirdest thing I ever saw at someone's house that they thought was completely normal. My friend told me that when her and her brother would find turtles, her dad would drill holes in their shells. This is painless for them, she said, and tie a string to their shell and the other end of the string to the fence so that the turtles would be their pets until they chewed through the string. This was totally normal for her. Edit, I have done some internet research, and the results as to whether a turtle can feel through its shell are inconclusive. I did read that touching a turtle is like how it feels for us when someone touches our fingernail. However, if I cut my fingernail, I do not feel pain. In my personal opinion, I would say no. The turtle did not feel the crazy man drilling through its shell. So within 2 minutes of Googling that question, yes, tortoises and turtles can very much feel pain through their shell because there are nerves that lead to the back of their nervous system. Please do not go out there and be curious about drilling holes into a bunch of turtle shells. That is entirely too cruel. I'm pretty open-minded, can't answer directly, but man, one time I was minding my own business, eating some peas, and a visitor to our house started cracking up as if eating peas was some foreign concept. Yeah, she was pretty big. Response: Apologies for the long rant here, but oh man, you just brought up an angry memory for me. We have a couple of sheltered friends. Well, acquaintances is more accurate. Anyway, for a season finale of Game of Thrones, I busted my butt making a huge themed feast for all our friends. Roasted a duck, had all kinds of delicious veggies, homemade bread, tarts, and pies. It was bigger than any Thanksgiving dinner I'd ever made. So this couple reluctantly sat down at the table, nervously side-eyeing the food. I started to get worried as they were passing up dishes, thinking maybe I'd forgotten some severe food allergy and hadn't made things they could eat. Finally, the husband put a sliver of duck and some roasted turnips in butter on his plate and poured a glass of honey mead. Every bite or sip he took and offered to his wife was followed by a melodramatic and over-the-top grimacing from both of them. Picture giving a baby a lemon wedge. It was embarrassing. Speaking of babies, they brought theirs. Cute little girl. I had her on my lap and she was reaching for everything on my plate. Gobbled up some duck, blueberries and cream, homemade bread, etc. with absolute delight. The mom kept exclaiming how weird it was because the kid doesn't like anything homemade. She eventually retreated to another room, where I found her stuffing candy bars into her mouth and giving her kid cookies. I was so sad. Went on a date with a girl. Things went well, and she invited me to her place for a drink. I didn't think they were going well enough for anything other than a drink to happen, so I accepted and headed over. Got my drink, and she excused herself to grab a quick shower. Well, maybe things were going well enough for more than just a drink. At the time, I was a smoker, so while she showered, I headed out to the deck. She wasn't in the shower yet, and when she heard me pull the curtains back to get to the sliding door, she said, "Don't go out there. The deck's no good. My key's on the table. Go out front for a smoke." I figured the apartment management hadn't kept the deck in good repair, and when I looked out, I could see something on the deck, but couldn't make out what it was. I headed out front for a smoke. When I was done, I let myself back in. The water shut off by the time I made it to the living room, and she said she'd be right out. I decided to look at the deck again. Curiosity and all. I flipped a light on and cupped my hands in the glass to block out the glare. Cat crap. The whole deck was literally covered in cat crap. There was fresh crap piled on old crap, and not a speck of deck to be seen. She came out wearing loose sweats and a little tank top, looking darn good, but I excused myself with some stupid reason or another and noped the heck out. TLDR, was an extra on the new show, Cat Crap Hoarders of Vancouver. A former coworker who invited me to hang out one day. You know the bulk packages of food that you see at Sam's Club and similar stores? Well, the living room kitchen area of this girl's apartment was covered in bulk packs of various foods. Noodles, sauces, taco shells, boxed macaroni, etc. They were stacked up on all the counters, stacked up against walls, stacked up in every corner, stacked up on top of a table and the fridge, all for her and her boyfriend. Enough food to last 2 people at least 6 months. There were also stacks of products in the bathroom. The cat's litter box was in the tub, and there was cat litter all over the bathroom floor. Edit, in case you're thinking, okay, so the girl likes to stock up on food ahead of time, and her bathroom is messy. I want to add that she was crazy. Drives to a particular pizza restaurant for lunch without us having previously discussed where to eat. Insists that we get certain pizza toppings. Tells the server we are splitting the bill. Normally, I wouldn't mind splitting the bill with a friend, but when you basically force someone to go to a certain restaurant and they can't even choose their food? But she did randomly drive us to Target and buy me a pack of Band-Aids without knowing either me or my then-boyfriend, well, orders me to date him for 6 more months before we think about getting engaged. 6 months later, we are married, and our 4th anniversary is approaching. Orders me to paint my bathroom a shade of blue. Repeatedly says that her boyfriend is afraid of her going back to her old life and turning to her old ways. She keeps repeating this, so I assume that she is hinting around about wanting to discuss it. Whenever I ask what she means, she refuses to explain but keeps bringing it up. I bolted out of there as fast as I could after we returned to her apartment, and I haven't spoken to her ever again. She did other things that were rude, not just crazy. Not me, but my friend, A, was sleeping at his friend's, B, house. When A and B got into B's house, B's parents were instantly up on their feet to meet them in the hallway. The parents then said, "All right, guys, time to search," and proceeded to check the pockets and bags of B and A in search of anything smoking, tobacco, and herb related. They acted like it was no big deal, but my friend A was really kind of shocked and felt uncomfortable having to let B's parents search all of his belongings. And apparently it was a good 5-minute search, thoroughly making sure nothing was wrapped up in socks or in the hoods of their jackets, etc. Really weird stuff. It was the early 90s in Scotland, at my friend's house, and his mother called us downstairs to eat. Dining table was prepared, and she told us to sit down and went into the kitchen. In there, she called out, "Jim, your dinner is ready." Jim, being my friend's father, who was sat in the lounge watching TV. Jim shouted back, "I'll eat my freaking dinner in here like I always do." His mother came in and laid our plates down on the table. It was lasagna. I liked lasagna and got down to eating. She then went into the lounge with another plate. Next thing I heard Jim shouting, "What the freak is that? For freak's sake!" And the plate is smashed off the wall. "I don't freaking eat rabbit food." Jim stormed out of the house and drove off, and Mother retreated to the kitchen. My friend didn't blink and continued eating.
Moms of Reddit, what do you know about your child that you will never tell him or her? Have a daughter in college. Her first summer back home, I went to wash all her clothes she brought back. As a college girl, it was at least 4 loads. As I sorted her clothes before washing them, out tumbled 4 toys that go where the sun don't shine, wrapped in a bag. They were huge, like huge. So I carefully wrapped them back up and slid them back into her things. I was/am a paternal figure to my orphaned younger siblings, and there is something I will never tell my sister. When she was going through a terrible period as an addict, late teens, she stole my mom's wallet, and all of her credit cards/bank accounts had to be canceled and changed. Our mom was in bad health, but had a huge life insurance policy she had gotten almost 15 years prior, when she was healthier. When the accounts were canceled, she forgot to change the automatic payments for the insurance. It was declined and subsequently canceled. She couldn't get another policy anymore. She had too many health problems. My mom told me about this all in confidence. Less than 2 years later, our mom died. Everyone thought she had a life insurance policy to help us, but she didn't. She left absolutely nothing. I'm the only one who knows why. It would kill my sister to know that her addiction cost us several $100,000. The recovery from my mom's death was really bad. Siblings had to move in with me, etc. And the insurance money could have saved us a long period of financial and emotional struggle. My sister is an incredibly kind, loving, and loyal person. She was a teenager at the time and going through a horrible period in her life regarding untreated mental illness. She came out of it and is one of my favorite people in the world. This incident is the only thing she's done to hurt/screw anyone over. She was just young and hurting and naive. It'll never be worth telling her. She's been through enough. We all have. I will never have more resentment than love for my little sis. Knowing something like that could push your sister back into a bad place, but it couldn't have been easy to keep that a secret. Your mother would be proud of you. Thanks. My mom never told her when it happened because she didn't want to make her carry that guilt. My mom knew she wasn't going to be alive more than a few more years and that she wouldn't be able to get insurance again. She chose not to tell my sister. I followed her example. Bro, if I was in this situation, I don't think I would want to tell or be told. It just sounds devastating. When my kid was 3, he created a full suit of body armor out of maxi pads, and I have photographic evidence. I've answered this before, but my teenage daughter writes spicy fan fiction on Tumblr and has thousands of followers. She doesn't know that I know, and it's pretty damn good too. How do you feel about that? Actually, I'm one of those liberal moms that's okay with my daughter having a healthy view of doing the deed, and she does. I've always been very open with her, and we talk about pretty much everything. I was turning my daughter's mattress when I came across a notebook full of unclothed women. She must have been putting it together for some time. Not wanting to embarrass her or violate her trust, I finished flipping the mattress and put the notebook back just as I found it. That was years ago, and she still has no idea. My own mother had trust issues, though I'd never given her a reason to mistrust me. It was just her nature, I guess. In any case, I vowed to raise my children to know the value of their word and that they could ask me anything. and I'd tell them the truth. Also, as long as they told me the truth, absolutely anything could be worked out. Want to piss mom off? Lie to me, then stand back. God, this thread makes me think about all the embarrassing stuff my mom must have found. All these years, those pictures I had below my mattress and below my books on my bookshelf, I never thought about what would happen once I left home. When I was in high school, my mom got Victoria's Secret catalogs and I used to sneak them and keep them for, viewing pleasure. One time I got home from school or whatever, and she had cleaned my room, which I had always hated, and they were all neatly stacked in the closet. That was embarrassing. That's nothing. I was still living at home about 2 years past fashionable and had a pocket pea in my room. I left it under the bed one night after I used it as intended and I forgot about it. My mom is a busybody clean freak and decided to clean my room. I got home that day and she informed me that my phone is back in its box in the closet and had been cleaned. I wanted to die. Ouch. My mom has some pretty embarrassing photos of me as a child, so I don't know if her finding anything weird in my room would be worse than those photos. My kid ate cat poop. We had a very long-haired cat at the time. Rest in peace, little buddy. Apparently some poop got stuck in his fur, only to fall out upstairs where the baby was crawling around and found it. 5 years later and she's still a normal, happy, healthy child. Sorry, sweetheart. I saw my flip cam was missing from the table I put it on, and I went to look for it in my 11-year-old son's room. I checked to see if there was anything recorded, and there was. He was spanking the monkey to a magazine of mine advertising women's clothing and underwear. He was commenting about which girl he would like to put his member in. I put the camera back, and when he came home, I asked him to bring it downstairs if he had it. That gave him time to delete the videos. He has no idea I was now hiding my flip cam and ladies' clothing magazines. He will never know that I saw his tiny member being manipulated to images of plus-size women. The only reason I taught my kids how to play poker was so that I could learn their tells when they were lying to me. It started out with them making stupid lies and expecting me to believe them. Yes, Mom, I brushed my teeth. Even though there's clearly still bits of food in between their braces and their toothbrush was bone dry. I figured that teaching them how to play poker would help them learn how to lie better, with the added benefit of learning their mannerisms when they lied in the first place. When my daughter was 3, she bonked my mom in the head with a toy, as 3-year-olds are prone to do. My mom had a blood clotting disease and got a blood clot in her head about a week later and eventually died from it. I'm not sure anyone but me has put 2 and 2 together, and I aim to keep it that way. My daughter had no idea what she was doing because she was 3. She would probably literally end herself if she found out about this, since she is a hair bipolar and gets to really dark places with too much bad news. My mom never seemed to put 2 and 2 together. She had the disease for 13 years and most people only live 6, so she felt very blessed. My wife would be devastated to know this, even though she knows. I don't think she connected both things. She probably doesn't remember my daughter bonking my mom on the head anymore. So I'll never tell them, and that's okay. I agree with the OP here. I would take that secret to the grave. Unless this child grows up to be a giant piece of doo-doo, then I might use the nuclear option. But even then, I might still hesitate. Probably not the answer you're looking for. My son is 4 and he doesn't think I know about the vegetables he puts in his pockets when I'm not looking. Oh, I know alright, cause laundry is fun. My friend's mom used to just puree all his vegetables into familiar sauces like spaghetti and fooled us for years. One of my classmates found out a few years ago that his mom's famous brownies had always had pureed broccoli in them. She was pretty horrified, but it was kind of hilarious. My 3-year-old is a very affectionate little guy, and he's very embarrassed about being affectionate. He thinks I don't know that he comes into my room every morning for snuggles and then sneaks out when I wake up. He's just all around a little shy guy. I just think it's a phase, and he's actually been a lot better lately. I caught my son once pretending to milk himself into a bucket while taking a bath. He was only around 4 years old, so I don't think he remembers, but he was hovering over a bucket and squeezing his member. I asked him what he was doing, and he told me he was pretending it was an udder and he was trying to milk it. I said, "Okay, honey," and slowly closed the door. The end. I went for a walk once with my daughter when she was about a year old. It was a long paved cement path and it went through a little scenic park area. Lots of suburban nature and stuff. I had brought the stroller along, but she was getting a bit antsy, so I took her out and sat her on the handles, facing me, and I held onto her waist and basically used her butt and forearms to push the stroller. As we walked, this section of pavement in front of us just ended up being covered in crickets. I didn't know why there were so many. I had never known this trail to have crazy amounts of crickets midday. Well, I anxiously started to push through them with the stroller, hoping if I moved slowly, they would have time to hop out of the way. They mostly hopped out of the way, but one hopped right onto my daughter's face. I panicked, and in a split-second reaction, I straight up smacked her. The cricket hopped off her face before I got to it, and she looked at me so stunned and started crying. And then I cried because I felt horrible, but I couldn't stop laughing because of how stupid the whole thing was. I got lots of weird looks as I cried/laughed the rest of the short walk home. She will never know. This is definitely one of those life moments that feel horrible but also hilarious at the same time. I'd probably do the same thing because crickets jumping at my face will catch these hands. She was conceived because I really wanted an iced cappuccino from Tim Hortons. He didn't feel like driving, so I made him a deal. It actually ended up being pretty nice in a field under a clear night sky with many stars out. Stay-at-home dad here. I was hoping that I would never need to tell my kids that 2 out of 3 of them served jail time in utero. That kid is probably like, "Dad, I've been meaning to ask, why do I have this teardrop tattoo under my eye for as long as I can remember?" I'll never tell my son that I follow every freaking single comment he makes on Reddit and that I'm the one that gives him the golds. Poor kid will always think that he's such a funny person. Not my kid, but at a family party, my cousin who was about 3 or 4 at the time needed a piss. The party was a buffet, and when his dad took him to the toilet, he discovered that the kid had been secretly threading hula hoop crisps onto his pee-pee. Not sure how well that translates to non-UK people. At least he didn't catch him trying to play the ring toss game with other kids. I will never ever tell my daughter that when she was 1 week old, I accidentally threw her across a room onto a wooded floor. It was about 2 a.m., I was breastfeeding her in the living room and a huge spider crawled on my arm. The whole new baby/late at night thing made me stupid, so my reaction was to use the arm I was holding the baby with to get the spider off my other arm. My little girl went flying. It was horrible. She was fine though, completely unharmed, just kinda pissed off. No one tell her. My son's grandparents have custody of him in Australia. His mother and I were a one-time fling on a beach in North Carolina, along with another girl at the same time. She went to prison for trafficking large quantities of substances in Australia, which is a major offense over there. I think she's serving 25 to life or something. One day I was called by the Australian version of Child Services telling me that I needed to come pick up my son. I didn't even know I had a son until then. He was 7 at the time. Apparently, what had happened was she put my name down on his birth certificate and kept my contact info on a bookmark that hung from her rearview mirror. His grandparents came and got him. They tell him that his daddy is off fighting in the war, and I've only spoken with him twice. I've sent over my part of the paternity test a few times to see if he's actually mine or not, but his grandparents keep ignoring them. I think they're afraid that I will show up one day and take him away. He doesn't really know me, and it would be awkward for me to just take custody of a 12-year-old that doesn't even know if he is mine or not. I think he's going to be pissed if he finds out the truth. So I took a leather-bound journal and wrote all the things about me that I think he should know along with the real story about why I wasn't around. I've included several stories about me and my time in the army, my travels, and a lot of good advice covering many situations that he might find himself in, complete with glossary and index. I wrapped up this journal along with my own dog-eared copy of the Ranger Handbook, with my own notes written in it, and an old set of my dog tags, and a way to contact me. I sent it off to a lawyer's office in Australia with instructions to deliver it to him on his 18th birthday. I'm looking forward to the Reddit post about the delivery when the time comes. This sounds like something out of a movie, and I tried to see if there was an update to this post since it's been years, but there's nothing. Womp womp. Years ago, we had this awesome cat named Chosen One. We all loved this cat, but especially my oldest son, who at the time was beginning to drive. He was about 17 or so. One day, my son was leaving the house to go somewhere, and when he left, he reached down and gave the Chosen One a little love and went out the door. Unbeknownst to him, the cat had followed him out the door, and for some reason, the cat must have ran under the car. Nobody actually witnessed this event, so we're just speculating on what happened. So my son drives off, and a little while later I go outside only to find Chosen One laying on the driveway curled up in a ball, dead. We think the kitty ran under the car, or it was in front of the tire or something when my son drove away and he ran over Chosen One. We were all pretty upset, of course, and when my son came home, we told him that Chosen One had been hit by a car in the road and died. We never told him, and never will, that we're pretty sure he was the one that killed the cat. He'd blame himself and forever feel guilty about killing his favorite cat. I walked in on my 5-year-old stepson with his pants down, rubbing the cat against his pee-pee, saying, "Oh, that feels nice." To which I replied, That's not what the cat is for. He was embarrassed and the cat hasn't been the same since. This story following the other cat story is just a bunch of L's for cats. When my first wife was 4 months pregnant, she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. At 18 weeks, the doctor gave her a few choices. Her best chance of survival was to give up the baby and have aggressive chemo. We talked about it. She decided to try and carry our son to term. They delivered our son healthy about 6 weeks early. She died about 5 months after he was born. I have since remarried and he is now almost 18. I don't plan on telling him that she saved him at her own expense. It was a tough time and I don't blame him and never have. After her mastectomy and a lengthy biopsy, she was found to have an extremely aggressive type of breast cancer. In fact, we found out later that it had spread considerably. The treatment would have been in vain. Even if she had gave him up, her life expectancy would have probably been less than 2 years. We made the choice to keep him before we knew this. Invasive treatments and MRIs/multiple x-rays would have put some risk on my son. So we made a choice. He knows she died of cancer, and he knows that it was soon after he was born, but not the details. He never knew his mom, and he does not grieve for her. It's cold, but it's true. She has written to him a number of letters, the first of which he gets at 18, the next at 21, and the final one when he gets married. They are sealed and private. I have no wish to open them, but it does remain possible that she will detail what happened, although I think it's unlikely, as before she died, she made me promise to protect him from all pain of her illness and decision. Wow, this is so sad. What a brave lady this mother was. Though if I were him, I think I would want to know. To be able to honor the sacrifice she made for me, in a manner of speaking. Maybe you should tell him. I know at 18, I started feeling very weary and without cause or effect. Being told something like that would have strengthened my resolve to do something good with myself. It's like a superhero genesis story. You're right, of course. He is having a rough time with his exams and career choices right now. He wants to ditch going to college and work for a few years, which is probably the right choice for him right now. I'm going to think about it and maybe talk to him in the next few months. To be honest, I'm probably more scared of digging up the pain of the past and having to go over the whole period again. I've not really thought about it for several years until I opened Reddit this morning. Wow, this was a tough story to read, but that mother made the ultimate sacrifice for their kid. I think I would want to know that if I was the child. That I found a treasure hunt that he created as a surprise for his girlfriend on their anniversary. One of the clues was that she should go to the place where he first hooked up with her bum. I should add that they were both adults when they first met, so whatever they do in their private lives is their own business. But I can never unsee that note. Damn, that is the old school version of sending your mom a text that was meant for your girlfriend. Dad here. I know what he's doing with the butter, and that's why I buy store brand for him to make toast at night and leave my good butter alone. And there's a reason I bought her own rechargeable batteries, because it's nice to have any remote actually work when you try to use it. There's not a calculator in the world that goes through batteries like that. Is it really more likely that he uses butter for pleasure? Because nighttime toast is awesome. I do wonder if parents read into things sometimes. I remember my mom and my two aunts talking about kids when I was about 10, and my mom mentioned something about long showers that I used to take. They all kind of laughed, and one of my aunts told me that it was natural. I just remember being uncomfortably in the spotlight for reasons I didn't understand. I was about 20 when I recalled that and realized what the hell they were talking about. I had no clue when I was 10 and honestly just loved being in the shower. Dude, same. My parents were careful not to really mention it. I loved taking long hot showers and just standing there getting lost in my own thoughts. But the whole time I knew they thought I was spanking the monkey. I maybe did that once in the shower. It was weird. I just didn't get the appeal. I'm 25 now. Should I call them? I also realized this activity was my first foray into sensory deprivation and meditation. Dude, this is funny because I also like to take long showers and just get lost in thought. So now I'm curious if anyone thought that about me. Not a mom here. When I was 5, my aunt walked into the room while I had a nozzle of a bicycle pump on the tip of my pee-pee. I was trying to pump air inside me to see if I would swell up like a balloon. I didn't know this until my mom told me about it a few years ago when we were having a chat about funny things that happened in the past. Luckily, we don't live close to a bridge because I seriously thought about jumping. How could she think that that would be funny to me? I was mortified. Hey, anything to make it look bigger, am I right? that I wanted to give him to a fire station for a couple of weeks. I didn't tell anyone until he was 2 weeks old because I thought it was something wrong with him and me. I didn't think I loved him and I was so ashamed. I ended up telling my husband in desperation one night and he snatched my son away, telling me that he would find a mommy who actually loved him. Neither of us knew it was severe postpartum depression. I thought I was incapable of that love and my husband thought I was a monster. I'm still battling the postpartum depression and anxiety a year later, but even now I can't believe how much I love him. I love him so much it hurts. I'll never tell my son about that horrible night, but I will tell him that depression and anxiety are never ever shameful. I think this is a smart message to tell children because depression and anxiety are serious things, but man, I question the husband here who didn't seem to try and help his wife. He just called her a monster. It's about my sister, but when she was a baby, my mom tried to give her away because she didn't want her. My dad found out and got her back from the woman. She is 21 and still doesn't know. My mom was suffering from postpartum depression, as told by the Redditors, and now she is good and she loves her more than anything. And we three have decided to keep it as a secret from her until we die. I find it crazy that you can just give a person away and that there are people out there that are willing to take a person that is being given away. Like, at least do it legally. He was conceived after we got lost trying to find a Halloween party at a friend's new place. We ended up going home, but as I was already in a French maid costume, it made perfect sense to get sloshed and forget the birth control. I don't imagine we will tell him that he was conceived in a French maid costume. Actually, who am I kidding? We will totally bust this story out for the future spouse. Went to use the bathroom and I left my 8-month-old on the rug. I found her in the walk-in closet gnawing on my fun stick. Did I learn my lesson? Nope. 4 years later, last week, she found it in my underwear drawer and promptly asked me why I have a dog bone. I've since said thrown fun stick in the trash. That's it for this video.
Redditors who grew up filthy rich. What did you think was normal till you learned otherwise? Honestly, it was the little things. I knew we had nicer cars than average, a bigger house, went on more trips, etc., but I thought everyone's refrigerator had wood-paneled cabinet doors. For example, we had a Sub-Zero built-in refrigerator and freezer. The first time I saw a metal fridge, I thought it was weird, and I thought it was even weirder that the fridge and freezer were combined. But then I got really jealous because you could put magnets on it. I also thought everyone had a central vacuum system where you can sweep dirt into a little hole under the cabinets by the floor and it sucks it up. We had these little holes all over in every room, stuff like that. Yeah, we had those and a bunch of other crap I thought was normal but was not normal. We had touchscreen TVs that controlled the HVAC, security, and lights and sound system before touchscreens were even a thing. I'm talking mid-1990s. It wasn't even a flat screen. It was a deep dish TV with a touchscreen. I had personally never heard of a central vacuum system in all my 27 years on this planet, but now that they've explained what it is, I do believe I have in fact seen them. And they sound cool as hell. I would totally have one. However, on the topic of refrigerators, I will never be surprised at the lengths humanity will go to preserve and refrigerate food, and frankly, the sky's the limit with refrigerator technology. At least until we get Mr. Freeze-Ray from the Batman. Probably a weird example, but growing up, all of our dishes were made of fine china, Waterford glassware, etc. And I just thought that's what plates and stuff were made of, because we didn't have anything else. Then one time I went to a friend's house for dinner and we ate on colored plastic plates and non-matching plastic cups. I just thought that was the weirdest thing ever and asked why we were eating with camping dishes. That's kind of rude, but when I was a kid, I didn't have a filter either. I just said whatever came to mind. I myself am not rich, but I have an uncle who is very well off. So one of my not rich aunts was complaining about her car acting up on her. Well, my cousin from the rich family was listening and got really confused. So he just asked her, well, why don't you just get rid of it and go buy another one? This kid was probably 13 or so at the time and had no concept of not enough money. He couldn't understand why you wouldn't just go get a new something if your old something didn't work.
Oh, to be young and naive and not understand how disposable income works or the value of it.
I would say rich in the area by comparison. I think the moment it really sunk in was during 5th or 6th grade, around middle school. I felt like I was getting too cool for little kid parties, so I decided I wanted to go somewhere and do something fun. My parents were super excited about this, since it meant I was taking one stupid middle schooler with us on a mini trip instead of having 15 stupid middle schoolers in the house. I decided on a trip to some festival, which meant a ferry ride and then drive to a Canadian city and have a big fancy meal. The girl I picked had been my friend for years. I had no idea her life was so different. She lost her mind on the ferry. It was so fun. She had never seen Canada before, so we stopped and took her picture. My parents, realizing immediately that this was a huge deal for this girl, bought her and I souvenirs, which she later gave to her mom since her mom has never left the area. My mom would not let her order the cheapest thing on the menu, which I never realized is something poor children are trained to do. I thought you could just pick whatever you wanted to eat. She was the first person in her family to travel more than 30 miles from her house. This was pre-9/11, when a family could just take a random child with no ID and a permission slip from their parents into another country. We are both adults now and occasionally run into each other. She's married with 4 children and still talks about the time we rode a ferry and went to Canada. Had she not brought it up, I probably would have forgotten. It's probably just the words they used, but there's something about the way this individual writes that rubs me the wrong way. I don't know if they intended to, but yeah, whatever. I lived overseas for a year when I was in high school and attended an international school where, though my family was decidedly middle class in the US and my dad was being paid several times more to work abroad than he had been at home, I'm fairly certain my family were the least well off in the entire school. None of these kids ever seemed to realize how fabulously wealthy they were. A few examples. Several boys from North Korea. I don't know exactly how high up in the political world of the DPRK you need to be allowed to send your children abroad for an education, but these kids showed up to school in brand new Benzes for a start. One friend of mine lived in a luxury high-rise in the single richest enclave of the city where I lived. His parents lived on the 16th floor. Each floor was a single unit. He lived on the 17th floor. In his own unit, he had his own live-in maid and driver as well. Another friend's parents ran the largest import and export company in the country. He had 2 bodyguards and was driven around in his own armored bulletproof SUV. Windows were 2 inches thick and didn't roll down. I attended his birthday, which was on his dad's 180-foot super yacht. It was not uncommon for my friends to spend 3-day weekends in Bali, the Maldives, or wherever their vacation homes happened to be. I'm still friends with several of them through social media, and the most frequent post I see from several of them is off to blank for the week, then on to blank and blank, those locations almost always being on 3 separate continents. Rich North Koreans, I never thought I'd hear those words put together unless they were following up Kim Jong-un. My father was a successful chemical engineer/manufacturer and private pilot. I spent my childhood in a gated flying community with a fully functioning airport. Not only did we have a garage full of your everyday vehicles, we also had an airplane hangar full of classic cars that my daddy enjoyed restoring. World War II era warbirds as well as the modern 2-engine planes he used to fly to business meetings. We own property in Nantucket and St. Martin, and we're constantly taking extemporaneous vacations. John Travolta would walk over from time to time and shoot the breeze with my dad in our hangar up until he made Pulp Fiction and was slingshotted back into relevancy. I remember having playdates with his son, Jet, was also family friends with well-known NASCAR drivers and would spend a lot of time at their mansions hanging out with their kids, driving around on golf carts and shooting paintball guns. Everyone I knew had airplanes, nice cars, big homes, and what seemed like an endless supply of wealth. That was my normal. When I was about 4 years old, I made a new friend at school and was invited to spend the afternoon over at his house. It was an eye-opening experience, to say the very least, and when I returned home, still very confused, I remember saying something along the lines of, "Mommy, they live in a really small house and they don't have an airplane hangar." My mother was slightly horrified at the realization that this was my reality and had to explain to me that not everyone has the same things that we have. Life has changed a lot for me since the 90s. When I moved away for college, my dad suffered a series of mini-strokes which subsequently caused progressive dementia. Towards the end, he couldn't even tell you what year it was. My father passed away in January, and I've been spending a lot of time recently looking through old photo albums and listening to stories. Maybe that's why I felt compelled to share all of this with you guys. Being rich is nice, don't get me wrong, but I would give it all back in a heartbeat just to spend a little more time with the dad I used to know, the man who was the master of his own universe. There was still so much to learn from him, but what I'm left with are the cherished memories of my childhood that will forever put into perspective just how lucky I really was. Rocking it out with John Travolta post-Saturday Night Fever, flying planes? That sounds like the life to me. I've actually flown a plane once before. Other than that, sorry about your dad, mate.
One, I thought every family had staff. We had a chef, gardener, chauffeur, 2 nannies, handyman/errand guy, took care of the house, picked up dry cleaning, bought supplies, washed the dogs, handled maintenance and repairs, and 2 maids. These were full-time and several lived with us. We had a host of part-time staff as well. When I went to college, I was shocked by how everyone took care of themselves so well when I barely knew how to tie my own shoes. 2. My private school had many Forbes 500 billionaire families, kids of world leaders, and general global establishment types. If we ever needed something anywhere, someone's parents or relatives or friend would have a connection. I just assumed that's how the world worked. 3. Money was always just an afterthought. Nobody ever asked anyone how much something cost. If you just liked something, you got it. Again, interacting with regular people in college was a huge eye-opener. 4. Respect. Everywhere I would go, either with my family or friends or their families, we were treated with what I understand now is a ridiculous amount of respect. It's hard to explain this one, but I think others in the same situation understand.
I feel like respect is a topic that we don't speak about enough nowadays, in that it isn't inherently given to you, but rather you are supposed to earn it. And I'm actually glad that this person, regardless of their social status or anything like that, is aware of this. And everyone should remember that. You don't owe anyone that you don't know personally respect. You only owe them an ounce of common human decency. Respect is earned through personal interaction. So, growing up, I knew my family and extended family was better off than others once high school came around, but it didn't really sink in until college. My parents immigrated from Iran to the US. I was a little kid and didn't have anything. My parents had engineering degrees, civil and computer, but my father wasn't allowed to work in our home country because he studied in the West. When we came here, they didn't speak English, so they couldn't work in their profession either. My mom stayed home, and my brother and me and my father worked several jobs. He saved up, along with a bit of money that was finally unfrozen, and started a small business. It grew very rapidly, but my parents didn't really change their own lifestyle. Since I was too young to really know what money is spent on when we were poor, it didn't really occur to me that we became rich. I just assumed this is what everyone in America did, the American dream, and that everyone else was like this, starts poor and then can afford all sorts of stuff. It didn't help that my middle school and high school were very split between rich and poor, so I figured the latter group was just in the process. I always heard college was expensive and some people could afford it, or that their parents had to save up or the kid had to get a job. I thought it was $1 million per year. I figured that seemed like something people couldn't afford. I based that on thinking that the lower class made $1 million a year, so spending a year's wage on 1 year of college would be unreasonable. Then I found out the average salary was less than my brother would spend partying in a weekend in college. Also, allowances growing up. I never had one, and everyone else did, so I figured they were all rich. Then one day I found out this girl I was seeing at the end of high school had an allowance of $50 a month, and it blew my mind. To my parents' credit, we immigrated to the States with nothing, and they built a business that was successful. Also raised us very frugal. My dad still drives a 2006 Jeep Liberty and my mom a 2009 Ford Expedition. My brother and a few cousins love spending, though. Edit. Turns out the Liberty is a 2001 and the Expedition is 2003. They taught us to be very disciplined and financially savvy. I worked my ass off to go down the route of being a physician and on the side started a business. They made sure they didn't help me financially so I could learn how it was to grow a business. Fast forward several years and it became successful enough that I focus on the business instead of being in medicine. I'm not far wealthier than they are and plan on giving the same type of discipline to my children. One of my best friends whom I met in college is very similar. His parents own a multi-million-dollar company and throughout school he had to have a job and pay for everything himself. Did anyone else think I sounded really cool when I said the American dream?
I'm not from a wealthy family, but my step-grandparents are really quite well off, living up in their mansion in the hills. 2 of my stepbrothers were fostered to them by their mother, while the unlucky third lived in squalor with her. I didn't even realize the double standard that was out there until one Christmas when the 2 fostered brothers got an Xbox 360 and 10 games each. The console had only just been released, whilst the other brother got a single game for his PlayStation 2 and a $20 note, and I got given the same thing, despite not even being blood, and my father being hated by them. At some stage, my third stepbrother's existence reached critical mass and became an alcoholic. At age 8, a couple years ago, his mother and my father were outed as being addicts to certain illegal substances, which resulted in them having their children taken away by Child Protective Services at the behest of my grandparents, one of whom is very high up in child services. My 2 half-sisters were taken by my wonderful and somewhat well-off grandparents, one of whom works for child services and who are genuinely loving, intelligent people who gave a breath of fresh air and a better outlook on life to 2 girls who knew nothing of the sort, taking great care of them while my stepbrother got sent to live with his dad, the one who supplied him with his alcohol and an abuser of illegal substances himself. I have no idea where he is now, but I don't have high hopes for his future. Meanwhile, his brothers are at university making a future for themselves with everything all paid for them. Sorry for the rant which got sidetracked by the sad story of a very unlucky boy, but it is quite a good demonstration of the difference wealth can have on the outcome of your life, and how unlucky some people can be. Sure, the wealthy have their periods of bad luck, of course, but when you're already in a terrible situation, it tends to be compounded, and some people are too young to be able to deal with these kinds of things, or even have a semblance of influence on their own life, and it often leads them down dark roads that will likely perpetuate the cycle of poverty, or often simply just ending a promising young life. TLDR, have 3 stepbrothers. 2 were raised by wealthy grandparents and are well off and educated. 1 has lived a life of poverty and suffering, and as such, has a very bleak future in store, though he is only young.
That was honestly just kind of depressing, to be honest. My parents are filthy rich, but they try to keep us humble-ish, so our main house is actually our smallest. I thought it was small because every room feels essential. There's a kitchen, bedrooms, bathrooms, a casual dining room, a formal dining room, a family room, a lounge room, which is really just the formal family room, a study for each of my parents, a conservatory, 2 playrooms for the kids, again, one more formal than the other, a gym, a cellar, and an indoor pool. It was small in my head because I could name every room. Some of our other houses are big enough that they have a lot of random useless spaces that you don't know how to name. It has some couches in it. It's a sitting room. You get stuff like the lobby and the mezzanine. So I sort of thought that everything in our small house was essential. At age 10-ish, I was absolutely flummoxed to find that people put swimming pools outside. You may as well have told me that your bathroom was outside, like an old-style outhouse. Every one of our houses has a pool on the inside. I later found out that my parents did that on purpose because we're all pale as get out, and an outdoor pool would get us all very crispy and sunburned. Imagine my surprise when I found at about age 14 that some people didn't have pools at all. And then when I went to university that some people can't even swim. There was a lot of little stuff too. Everyone can eat with chopsticks, read music, know basic Latin, has a signet ring, or at least freaking know what one is, know which cutlery to use. I remember wondering if my friends were messing with me at a semi-formal university event in first year. It was a round table and no one knew which bread roll was theirs. Has an assortment of outfits of all possible dress codes ready to go at a moment's notice. Can I come to the gala tonight? Absolutely, no problem. Suppose that you were sitting down at this table. The bread rolls are in front of you. Which bread roll would you take? The one on your left or the one on your right? Usually you would take the one on your left side. That is correct. But in a larger sense on society, that is wrong. Perhaps I could even substitute society with the universe. The correct answer is that it is determined by the one who takes his or her own bread roll first. Just a little Steel Ball Run reference for my fellow JoJo fans. I was always amazed that people didn't have a closet full of clothes like me. I know that sounds stupid, but I wore Gap, Tommy Hilfiger, and all that other nonsense, and my mom made sure we all looked amazing. My best friend had like 2 pairs of shorts from Goodwill. I literally could not believe it. I got in trouble for trying to give her my play clothes, which were all still designer clothes, just ones I had had for a couple years. That and cars. I remember asking my friend's mom why she was upset waiting for her dad to get home from work so she could use the car. Can't you just use yours? The concept that some families could only afford one car blew my mind. Granted, I wasn't filthy rich at all, but when I switched to public school in 5th grade, my choice, very against what my parents wanted, my new friends all were in shock at my neighborhood and house. To me, it was just normal. All my private school friends had much bigger homes than me, some even with private planes. I am probably so wrong, but I always kind of think when someone has a private jet, that is like the 1%. I didn't necessarily grow up super rich, but my dad made between $500 and $750K a year while growing up. I think he makes closer to $750 to $1 million now, and I had a few moments like this. My dad is usually a frugal person, but since he grew up poor, he afforded himself some luxuries. It wasn't until at least high school that I realized how out of the ordinary it was for both of my parents to have $30,000 watches. I think the biggest shock was college. It was totally paid for by my parents. They paid out of a 529 plan, but for my sister now and brother after they never set one up and are just paying right out of salary. I knew kids would have to take debt on, but I honestly thought until about a year ago, just graduated last May, that most kids would graduate with $10K debt max. It wasn't until just recently I learned some kids were taking on double that or more each year. It shocked me. And also made me thank my parents extensively for saving me from $100K or more debt by paying for college. I wouldn't say I was filthy rich, but I was definitely given a lot of advantages and head starts in life because of my dad's money. I can't imagine what growing up with an extremely rich parent gets you advantage-wise if my dad was able to give me everything he has. The only money I really think about regularly is my money, but it's kind of crazy to think about the different echelons of richness there are. Late to the party. Before my dad died, he was murdered when I was 7, we were super rich. He owned his own company and my mom owned her own business as well. I was telling my boyfriend the other day how she'd take us to the mall and just hand each of her 3 kids $500 and tell us to go wild for no reason. After he died, we fell into poverty and my mom went basically insane and lost the house, companies, and declared bankruptcy. Well, that was genuinely a terrible tragedy what happened to your father and mother, but that is a superhero origin story right there.
As a man, what are some of the most ridiculous double standards you've had to deal with? This girl in my office had a crush on me. Told everyone. Started doing stuff like calling me her work husband, which I said was not okay. Things got slowly worse. She started pranking me. She took a picture of me, then cut out my face and started putting it all over the office. All over. Got coworkers to start talking to me about how fun and quirky she is, etc. Wrapped up my cubicle in Christmas paper. I asked her to stop. Even spoke with her manager. Nothing. I got a card from my girlfriend for Valentine's Day. She lit it on fire and threw it in the sink in the break area. Apparently this is still cute and just her showing me she cares. I ended up quitting. How far was this lady, about to go? Hi, I bought you a bunch of chocolates. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I like chocolates. And I just bought us a house together with your name on it. I didn't consent to this. And I have marriage papers. Oh, we're gonna be perfect. I have a girlfriend. I don't need this. I know.
It's me! Me! Girlfriend material!
Chapter 1. Was in a store for little girls trying to find my daughter the unicorn hair bow she was asking for. My wife, who was waiting in the car outside, overheard some women leaving the store talking about how creepy it was for a man to be there. Like, which? I'm there for my daughter. I have a very good guy friend. He's a big dude, 6 foot 6 inches. He has a little girl. He's also a single dad, so no mom to help, and freaking adores her, but cannot stand the verbal diarrhea people have when he goes to the stores to get her little girl things, i.e. a special tea set, fun fluffy toys. It got so bad that he called me to go into a Hello Kitty store with him and act like I was buying the gigantic fluffy Hello Kitty pillow for himself. Of course I did it, but I cannot imagine how he feels as a guy who just wants to get things for his little girl, but gets looked at like a creep or worse because of it. No, you know what? He's a good dad. If I got a kid, I will stare them in the eyes, just dead right in the corneas and just scream at them.
Stand aside, evil witch. I do not care for such pretenses, or what judgment your eyes lay upon my soul and body. I shall purchase this Hello Kitty plush for my queen at home in her bedchambers. Now excuse me, I am Sir Dad.
I wore skin-tight suits at the indoor skydive center I used to work at. The number of times I got touched inappropriately by women was crazy. Worst part? Management told me to take it as a compliment. that I should be happy with the attention. I don't work there anymore. I wasn't fired, but I just didn't want to put up with that crap and some other unrelated crap any longer. One time, an older 40-year-old woman spanked my behind in the wind tunnel, and I ended up forcing her out of the wind tunnel and told her to stop. I sarcastically twisted it to be about her safety. If she's so busy slapping my back door, she's not in the right body position to fly. If she continues to do so, I will be forced to stop her skydiving experience for her safety. Boy, it would be terrible if one of these slaps kind of go just like out of control. Literally, like, think about it, they're at a skydiving center and literally this guy is like, okay, everyone, I need you to do this position and be careful because you don't. And like, they like run up the wind tunnel and try to go in for a slap and literally is over the edge. It's like, hee, here I come, Sonny. Whoa! So, you don't want to do that. That's not safe. Class is dismissed. And I quit. I was a male who worked in childcare for 5 years. I understood the reasoning behind it, but I had to be absolutely dead careful to be impeccable in my dealings with kids and parents. Just because anything slightly off about my vibe could spell the end of my career. I had on more than one occasion have a new parent who hadn't dealt with me before refuse to leave their kid at the school with me. I was the only staff on the premises, opting to wait in the car until a female staff member arrived. This wasn't the case with parents who were familiar with me, but new parents often just didn't trust me at all. When I resigned from the school, the other staff said how irreplaceable I was, how much the kids and staff trusted and appreciated me. I really think I did a good job. But even so, just being a male meant that I was trusted less from the get-go. I didn't hold it against anyone, but it was a double standard I ran into often. If you're a stay-at-home father, or worse, just a stay-at-home spouse as a male, there's a sizable portion of people who are going to think less of you as a man, assume you're a freeloader. While the opposite is true to an extent as well, stay-at-home mothers or housewives are far more socially accepted. People will sing the praises of stay-at-home moms, call it the hardest job in the world, ask if her husband is helping out enough at home. A man will be asked if he's on babysitting duty, will be mocked for playing Mr. Mom, will be ridiculed for staying home while his wife works out, having his wife wear the pants, criticized for not providing for his family, etc. I was out of work for a period due to my gym temporarily closing as a result of COVID restrictions, meaning my girlfriend was supporting us. I had worked for the entirety of our 15-year relationship until that point, but that didn't stop people from acting as if I was a deadbeat. As a single dad with custody of my son, the amount of times I've been asked, "Why do you have him?" on a first date, or when I start talking to a woman on a dating app, is ridiculous. I can only imagine what would happen if a single mother was asked that same question. Why is it completely acceptable for a woman to leave a man and take his kids away, no questions asked, but when a man has custody, I'm treated like I must have stolen my own child? My mom got custody of both my sister and I. My sister was smart enough to go with my dad after a while. I was still too young to realize the situation I was in. My mom inherited a bunch of money from her uncle, and we were loaded, so as a kid who got most of what I wanted, I didn't think anything of the situation. Long story short, my mom spent all her monies on illegal substances, and my dad was working like 3 jobs to pay almost $1,000 a month in child support, while my sister and I were in mom's custody. She had me on a bunch of prescriptions because she didn't know how to parent. I don't remember much of my childhood, to be honest. I ended up asking my dad to live with him, and he came and picked me up essentially across the country the next day. I went from living in a $500,000 house in Florida with my mom to a double-wide trailer in New York with my dad. He was actually a parent to me. She still spent all her money and mine and my sister's college funds that our rich uncle had set up for us. Basically, I just wanted you to know that I know that dads can be the real heroes. I will never question why a man has custody of his kids. My dad will always be number one. When a girl is into you at the bar and you say no, Holy schmoly, do they go hard out. And when you really drop the absolutely not, I've gotten hit, kicked, my drink hit out of my hand, called every name in the book. No means no, but I guess only for chicks? I had to stop hanging around for my kids' swimming lessons. They had a big window in the lounge area where you could watch your kids. I'd be grinning like an idiot, waving frantically as my boys splashed around. Just about every week, though, some Karen would give me the stink eye, or worse, an interrogation. Same would happen at the parks or the grocery store, especially when he was a toddler. They'd get right in his face and ask where his mother was. Oh, nice dad. Must be babysitting today. Ugh. Never mind the time I tried to pick him up and I wasn't his mother. They didn't know who his mother was, but they knew it wasn't me. I'd been taking him and whatnot for ages. I have a very prominent beard, which makes me stick out like a sore thumb. But yeah, I don't look familiar to them. Forget all that crap. I was at my wife's company Christmas party, and the girlfriend of her coworker straight up grabbed me, wrapped her arm around me from the side, and squeezed my back door. Then she asked my wife if it was okay. She literally didn't even say hi to me. I felt like an object. I was too surprised to do or say anything for like a solid 60 seconds. My wife didn't really register what was going on, so didn't say much of anything. The boyfriend didn't see, I guess. Anyway, flip the genders and somebody would have said or done something. When men open up about their feelings, they're often viewed as weaker, less masculine, immature, and too emotional. When women open up about their feelings, they're often viewed as more empowered, more feminine, more mature, and more in touch with their emotions. When men fail, they're often viewed as pathetic and not working hard enough. When women fail, they're often viewed as hard workers staying strong in an unfair world. When men make more money than women, there's controversy about the wage gap. When women make more money than men, those men are viewed as inadequate and lacking ambition. In my experience, many women say they want to see a man being open and emotional, but what they really want is some kind of Hollywood masculine version instead of the honest kind that might involve some ugly tears and cross-gender empathy. Also, if a woman uses it against you even a little bit in the future, they shouldn't be surprised that you'll never really open up to them honestly again. It's an uphill battle for men to open up, and once you burn that bridge, there's not really a second chance. Half of my attractiveness has always been based on how much I make. I just experienced this. My mother married into wealth on her third marriage, private jets, yachts, the works. I am mostly humble about it and keep it on the down low. I mean, it's not my money. They don't support me, and we have a terrible relationship. Started hanging around a friend that loved to boast about money and the money that other people have. He would tell women I come from money and they should lock me down. The amount of interest they had in me after that would skyrocket. It would be a normal woman for 1 second, then turn shallow, fake, and super desperate. Not going to lie, the desire felt great, but I quickly learned it's not real. I stopped being friends with him and haven't looked back. My parents don't support me, so I don't live a lavish lifestyle. So if I happen to meet a girl through family or friends, or at a wealthy person party, event I'm attending with my family, once they get a dose of how non-baller I live, they're usually out. The rule is, if it's about money, that's all it will revolve around. I'm a physician. I get hit on by a lot of females, usually older women. If not directly telling me I'm attractive or easy on the eyes or something, they tell my female assistant or female residents or students who I am training, and it makes them feel very uncomfortable. Or they'll tell the nurses in pre-op or recovery unit or the anesthesiologist, etc. Imagine men saying crap like that to or about a female doctor. Pretty sure most know that's an absolutely inappropriate thing by now. I hope. I know females deal with that constantly in general, but it makes for an uncomfortable situation when you're establishing a relationship with patients. I've asked my female colleagues if they get directly hit on by patients, and thankfully for them, they've all said no. So, at least there's that. I'm a rather big guy. I lift every day, but honestly, I don't realize I'm intimidating. I'm kind of a blundering idiot. I left my lights running in my car and went inside a grocery store, came out, and my battery was dead. I had jumper cables, but needed another running car. Right then, a young woman with 2 children walked up to the car next to me. I introduced myself and started explaining my plight and asked for help. She jumped in her car quick and drove off, didn't say a word. Then I realized I probably scared the crap out of her. Random big dude walked up to her while she was alone with her kids. I called a friend and he was 30 minutes away, but on his way to help me, I'm waiting next to the car and 2 police cruisers roll up on me. Hands in the car, vehicle search, the whole 9 yards. The lady had called the cops. My buddies showed up mid-search and they harassed him too. They were convinced we were running some abduction ring or something. They finally let us jump my car and go. Even then, one of the cruisers followed me to my house. It was annoying. Lesson learned though, never ask help from a stranger. So, funny story here. I was out of the mall with my then girlfriend at the time, and we ended up inside a woman's lingerie underwear store. Not the famous one that you can imagine, but it definitely had the same feel or vibe to it. They had just opened their doors and had a promotion. If you try on a bra, you can take it for half price. Limit 1 per customer. Cue my idea. I try on my girlfriend's bra size as a joke and get her 2 bras. That she'd pick out, of course, for the price of 1. No brainer, am I right? I asked the store clerk where the dressing rooms are so I could try it on. I was adamant about following the rule, and she says only women are allowed to try on the merchandise. I even offered to walk out of the dressing room with it on to prove a point. Trust me, I would have made it fit. Sadly, she didn't go for it, and I walked out of there with a laughing girlfriend and a burning hatred for that store and their unfair rules. I had a female security guard search me up and down, touching my no-no square full on at a nightclub, at an entrance check-in. Didn't do that to my girlfriend who was with me, or a male security guard didn't try the same thing with my girlfriend. Why was I searched? If a male guard searched a woman's no-no square full on, yeah, good luck. And that was like 2 years ago, so metal detectors are a thing. I told my girlfriend at that time, and she just laughed. So, I have a story in the opposite direction. I had been at work all day, and I came home to my girlfriend, at the time, on Omegle, intoxicated, and zipping up her sweatshirt. Basically, I came home and caught her flashing her swanky billies at strangers on the internet after she had stolen and drank all of my beer I had in the fridge is on my computer. She wasn't working, and I was paying all the bills, so I said, "Freak this!" Unplugged the computer and told her, "You're done on the computer, you need to sober up." This resulted in her trying to smash the computer screen, roundhouse kicking the TV next to the computer, and breaking it, and trying to pull a bookcase down on me. So I picked her up and carried her out of the house. The whole time, she smashed me in the head with a can of Campbell's tomato soup. I deposit her outside, and she promptly smashes the window on the door. So I go aside and force her away from the house so she doesn't cut herself on the glass. And she pulls out her phone and starts calling the cops. At this point, I pull out my phone and call the cops. And I'm talking to the female dispatcher about what happened, and I hear the girlfriend off in the background telling them she fears for her life and that I was standing next to her and threatening to pull the plug while I was on the phone with the other operator. The cops show up, female officer goes talk to her, male officer comes talk with me. Within a few minutes, I see the female officer force my girlfriend into the back of the car, and the male officer excuses himself from me and goes to talk to the female officer. I overhear a bit of the conversation, and it's basically the female officer stating that my girlfriend is obviously drunk, that she lied to the 911 dispatcher and confirmed with the one that I had called that I wasn't anywhere near the girlfriend while she was accusing me of threatening her, and the real zinger? The girlfriend told her that I drug her out of the house and that the whole time she was hitting me in the head with a can of soup. I just wouldn't expire despite her best efforts, and it wasn't fair. So I got referred to someone who could help me, a hotline, and my ex got locked up for the weekend as it happened on a Friday. Otherwise would have been a 12-hour release without a no contact clause on her release. Long story short, I bailed her out on Monday at the cost of $900. And things were up and down for the next 3 or 4 months, at which point we went to court for a hearing, and the judge announced, "She's such a small girl, and they've been living together all this time. So obviously she wasn't really any threat. I'm going to charge her with a disturbance of peace with a $40 fine, and she's free to go. Of course, I had a black eye that day because she had gotten intoxicated and tried to hurt herself that night before. And I basically pinned her down so she couldn't. So she decided to punch me in the face a good 8 or 9 times as a reward. Thankfully, I managed to get her evicted out of my place a month later, but only because I paid a bunch of money to the state to enforce it. My brother-in-law loves basketball and coached women's teams for years. He told me that women actually listen and follow the plays much more than men, so it's a real treat to coach women over men. He had to give it up because of all the bullcrap going on within the community and him being a male coaching girls. The only people that really suffer here are the girls that had an amazing coach, but the gossip bags just can't keep their hen-like beaks shut. My ex is a bartender. I am a drummer in a decently popular band in my town, so we get a lot of attention because of this, and both jobs require us to use that to our advantage. Tips for her, and keeping people coming to our shows for me. I've never had a problem with her flirting for tips. In fact, I encouraged it. I also work in the restaurant industry, so I know how it works. But God forbid a girl came up to me to say, "Great show," I'd be expected to just walk away and not interact. That's why she's my ex. This isn't my story. This happened at school while I was skipping every class I had that day, went off smoking the herbs. My youthful stupidity. Anyway, there was an incident at a school where one of the girls had health issues and had a seizure and stopped breathing. At the school, there has to be at least one person who can provide first aid, and he was male. He had to give her CPR until the paramedics arrived. Thankfully, she lived, but the guy who gave first aid had a complaint by the girl's parents as they didn't think it was appropriate for an adult male to give CPR, and citing that kiss of life is inappropriate. He saved their daughter's life, and he was thanked by getting fired for it. No praise, no thanks, nothing.
What was your high school's tragedy? We had this one teacher. She was the Quest teacher. It was a health class, basically. She talked about sexual education and the dangers of smoking, that sort of thing. We got to sit on couches in a big circle rather than desks in rows. She sadly contracted breast cancer, and it was pretty bad. She went bald from the chemo and had a port installed on her chest so they could just inject into that since they had already destroyed all the veins on her arms and whatnot. Despite all this hardship, she was one of the warmest, sweetest, most cheerful, and most loving people I have ever met. I'll always remember one particular thing that she said. She talked about going to a friend's funeral recently. The friend had died an agonizing and slow death from cancer. My teacher wore a brightly colored floral patterned dress while everyone else was wearing black. She did this because she was not mourning. She was celebrating the end of her friend's suffering. She had accepted death and made peace with it, and knew that it was just the natural course of life. She died a year later and the whole school was devastated, and I made sure to wear bright colors. I think that was actually rather beautiful. It's a natural thing as people to either deal with the death of those we love or our own expiration, but the fact of the matter is death is a natural part of life that we simply have to accept at some time or another. A girl named Joy, who was insanely happy and nice and popular, had an aneurysm and died. She was uncharacteristically mean that day and told everyone she had a headache. It happened in the hallway, and she just kinda slumped against the lockers. We found her when classes let out. One kid said, "Joy's here in the hall." A huge jock dude picked her up and took her to the nurse, and someone called 911. She had been dead for some time by then. Saddest thing I ever saw. She was the sweetest person. Ate lunch with the special kids a few times a month. She was a sophomore and insanely popular. She was really tiny, and at one time, at a dance, a weird rap mosh pit formed. Joy got to crowd surf. She really resembled a tiny, fairy-like girl. Our whole school mourned her for months. It's always a tragedy when a kind young person has their life inexplicably and suddenly taken away. I hope you rest in peace, Joy. I was only in 9th grade at the time. I think he was in 10th or 11th. But the dude was a stellar wrestler and all-around very nice guy. He would help the newer kids, like myself, in practice and give us tips on how to get better. Good-looking, friendly. You know, the typical star athlete that everyone loved. One night, he was at Harris Teeter, getting some groceries and was carjacked with his friends. They drove them both in their car about 5 counties away, told them to get out, put their shirts on their heads, and told them to run into the woods. As they did, they were shot. The friend managed to get away. I think he was wounded, but Louis was shot in the head. God, it's been years. This happened in the late 90s, but I can remember the dude like it was yesterday. It was a very sad time for our school. Here's a little story about how I met Louis and ended up on the wrestling team. I actually got caught skipping school by Coach Perry, wrestling and gym coach, in the 9th grade. I was very small, maybe 5'5", and like 105 pounds. I was playing Pokemon Red and Blue with a friend in the stairs that no one used that led up to the weight room. Coach Perry came in looking for some equipment. They used this stairwell as a storage closet. You really couldn't even go upstairs all the way because of everything blocking it. Nava was with him, helping him drag out mats for wrestling practice. My friend was immediately excused and sent back to class. I was told to help them get the mats out, which I did. I was afraid I was going to be suspended or that he was going to call my parents. I remember Louis patting me on the back and telling me everything was cool and that Coach Perry was going to make me an offer. After the mats were set up, Coach Perry and Nava talked for a moment, then called me over to a scale. I was told to get on. I weighed in at 104 or something like that, and Coach Perry and Louis just smiled. I was then told I had 2 choices: join the wrestling team or be taken to the offices to get rode up. Naturally, I chose wrestling and was running around the gym in a trash bag that evening. I literally knew nothing about wrestling. The stances, points, and everything else were unknown to me. After practice, we had scrims and I had to go against the 110 guys. I remember Louis taking me aside and showing me this killer leg swoop and grab. He let me practice it on him a few times, then I did it for real in the scrim. I remember it went perfect. Kid never knew what hit him and I put him on his back. Louis came over, gave me a high five and a big slap on the back, walked over to the coach and said, "Looks like we found our new 105 guy." 2 weeks or so later, he was dead. To this day, I still don't think I thanked him enough for being so cool to a freshman like that. He made sure I felt like I belonged on the team and wasn't just there to get out of trouble. Just a small story to show you the kind of dude Louis was. Always willing to help and a class act. Just a good all-round dude. I had planned on quitting after a few practices, but after his death, I stayed on the team for the full season. Just didn't seem right, because Louis would never have quit. This was both tragic and beautiful. Louis Nava, you sound like an absolute angel. I hope you rest in peace while your killers suck eggplants in hell. You know what I mean by that. Coach Perry, it sounds like an authority figure that you need at a school. Someone who is not only willing to dole out punishment where necessary, but also offer opportunity to someone who then went on to do a full season of wrestling, which they wouldn't have done otherwise. It's beautiful how these people helped inspire you, but also unbelievably tragic, which is why I say, people, you should cherish everyone that you meet and know, because anything can happen in this crazy world. Shying away from a death post, Catholic high school. 2 of our favorite teachers who had actually made their classes engaging and opened up their classroom to anybody needing a hand in school and in life had both divorced before they had started teaching there. They decided to move in together after dating for 2 years and were planning on getting married the next year. They kept it all quiet out of pure professionalism, and somehow administration found out and fired both of them. I believe for breaking the school's code of conduct for teachers by cohabiting before marriage. We lost 2 of the best teachers in our school that helped out and inspired their students in every way they could try to. This one actually makes me sad because a good teacher is really hard to find. When I was a kid, I did not appreciate my opportunity in education very often. I would be disrupting. If I was in a bad mood, I would have standoffs with teachers, and I just didn't really care. But now as an adult with that past, I greatly appreciate education, and I think everyone should. Teachers already have a hard time dealing with kids that disrespect them, but also when it's like administrative rules like that, the only thing I can really say is hopefully that didn't stop their plans of getting married, and I hope they still have each other. But at the end of the day, it still really sucks because now this school has been deprived of 2 people that seemingly really cared about education. In my final year of high school, there was an absolute poo storm regarding personal information that was accessed by half the grade using a teacher's login details. We had the password for years and used it to check marks and ranks of schoolwork, and all was good. In the final weeks of high school, some idiot decides to change his English mark, moving himself from 33rd to 3rd. The school obviously finds out, and everyone who is involved gets in trouble. The kid that changed his marks obviously got expelled, while the other half of the grade all got punished by not being permitted to attend the school formal and graduation. Next thing I know, everyone's starting a huge protest, and some CEO or something gets involved and revoked the punishment because parents were threatening to get lawyers or something. Considering the teachers gave out the password willingly to another student and the school refused to admit the teacher's mistake, aggressively trying to blame the students for hacking when that simply wasn't the case. That one was honestly refreshing compared to everything else that we've been reading through, but don't get your hopes up, it is not about to get much happier. We had a teacher that for some reason everyone took a dislike to. He wasn't that bad or strict, but for some reason everyone hated him. I was in class once and we locked him in his equipment cupboard. Stuff like that regularly happened to him. He never really used to say anything, just kinda got on with it. Eventually, he split from his wife and lost his driving license for drink driving. He ended up having to get the bus in the morning with everyone traveling to school. As always, everyone was really cruel to him. Halfway through year 9, he decided to commit self-deletion. The worst thing about that was that everyone found it really funny. Adult me is feeling very ashamed of teenage me right now. Edit. Yes, I'm aware of how awful this story is. The man was clearly battling some severe depression at the time. This was roughly 18 years ago in the Midlands, UK. He taught woodwork. No, he wasn't physically pushed into his equipment cupboard. He used to go in there to get equipment and drink alcohol. One day when he was in there for a long period, someone just locked the door. I can't remember how long for, but it was during a 2-hour session and he was outside for most of it. I'm hoping that it was just a couple of minutes, but it could have been longer. I didn't get the school bus and only had his class for one term. This was a problem the whole school were involved in. There were roughly 1,250 students in the school. Everyone in the school had this same outlook towards him. He had previously gotten into arguments with parents, although I don't know the reason for this. The teachers knew about it, but I think with his drinking issues, they weren't sure how to handle it. They were very slow in telling us that he had died, and by the time they figured out how to address the issue, everyone knew. So I think no one knew how to handle the situation. No one reveled in his death, no one knew what to do, and I think the jokes may have been people's attempt at handling the situation. So for one thing, I'm glad that this person feels bad about the way that this individual was treated. You shouldn't feel bad about it all your life because you probably didn't have like a direct hand in it by any means, but I'm glad you feel bad. So I picked this story out specifically because I come from the Midlands of the UK, specifically the West Midlands, based on the calculations of when it was posted and the 18 years. I was not in high school at this point, it seems. But seriously, if you find someone who's being treated like utter crap for seemingly no reason whatsoever, just check on them, please. Like, a bit of kindness goes a real long way, and it can even maybe prevent someone from making a stupid decision. This was just really sad. We had 3 heart-wrenching, oddly connected tragedies in 1 year. When I was a junior, a girl lost control of her car and crashed. The impact ended her life, but her 2 passengers were okay. She was a wonderfully nice girl, always smiling, participating in an ROTC drill team. The school was shaken by her sudden passing. I attended her funeral and cried my eyes out, wondering how her family managed to not cry 24/7. My brother was a pallbearer. A month later, a senior boy crashed into another vehicle while on his way to an ROTC drill team practice early in the morning, way before school started. He was the captain of the team, a quiet leader, gifted, known for solving Rubik's Cubes in class. My brother. He was comatose. The pallbearer's carnation from the girl's funeral was still on his desk. Its water had been poured out, and the white flower was dying slowly. As if that wasn't enough, a sophomore boy was involved in a collision just a few days later when he was leaving the school. He died instantly. Oddly enough, he was involved in ROTC extracurriculars too. The news hit me like a ton of bricks as I sat in the hospital's waiting room. My brother died in the hospital about a week later. I was allowed to stay home for the rest of the school year. At his funeral, I understood why the family of the deceased doesn't sob their way through the service. We had moved to a place beyond tears. We finally took his old furniture out of his room today. I cried thinking about the pallbearer's carnation sitting on his desk. My high school's tragedy will follow me for the rest of my life. I totally get that part about the being beyond tears bit when you're at a funeral. I have not had that many losses in my family until about 3 years ago with my grandmother, and it was heartbreaking. I won't go into details, but I completely understand. Rest in peace to all of those people. Countless. One student was run over by an 18-wheeler in front of his family. One very popular teacher went home one day feeling ill and passed away 2 days later from cancer he didn't know he had. 2 different teachers committed self-deletion, multiple drunk driving deaths, a drug-related multiple murder, another drug-related murder, a CP case, a teacher who molested several students, and one student allegedly killed by the Boston bomber years before the bombing. I think that just sounds like a cursed school. I'm so sorry to the victims of those occurrences that didn't die, and rest in peace to those that did. I gotta say, I have picked some really depressing topics to talk about on this channel, like, goddamn, strap in, people. An English/drama teacher got a role on a late-night TV show. Got the twins out on TV and had to quit teaching. Was a tragedy for us that she left. She was a hot younger teacher, and suddenly drama class had a lot less male students. I do hope you enjoyed that slightly funny one while you can, because it's about to get a little depressing again. We had a security guard named Creighton. He was the most kind-hearted man you will have ever met. He smiled at everyone and was open to talking to you no matter who you were. I remember him overseeing detention, and it was my first time during my freshman year. He walked up to me, and I was scared to bits, and he told me, "You see this room? Don't ever come back here. You're better than it. Don't let me down." I never got in trouble again because of him. Senior year, he was diagnosed with cancer, and it was already too late. He became this skinny ghost of what he used to be, but he continued to smile and cheer up everyone's lives until his last day alive. The day he passed, I think the entire school cried. I credit him for making me who I am today, because of how supportive he was. Like I said, man, you just gotta check on people, show them some support, give them some motivating words or something, It doesn't work for everyone, I'm not gonna lie to you, but goddamn. Rest in peace, Creighton. I have 2 stories to tell. One is the story that affected me the most personally, and the other is a story that shows the true courage and strength of a guy I did not personally know. The first 2 stories begins with a German kid, me, who moved to the States and started going to American school. Once I was in middle school, a boy named Blake approached me and started asking me to translate this long list of words he had made to German, asking me to sound them out for him so that he could learn. He was obsessed with World War II and the Germans, so he began to befriend me. I personally thought he was incredibly annoying. One day he invited me over and I decided why not and went to his home. Ever since, we became best friends. Once high school rolled around, I was more focused on school and he began hanging out with the wrong crowd. We both had carpentry classes and shared this big senior locker to keep our tools in. I was working for a friend's dad when I got a call that he had gone out drinking and got into a fatal car accident. His car hit a semi-truck. He got knocked unconscious and his car was on fire. My middle school best friend burned to death and all they could find were his teeth. I still tear up thinking about it. The worst part is all of a sudden everyone that barely knew him is acting like they were his best pals, and some girl that he dated for 3 months got to speak at his funeral. Yet I didn't even get to sit up front because all 150 people that knew him seemed to show up because it was the popular thing to do. I can't be too bitter though, because I'm glad that many people showed up for him. The worst part was cleaning out his side of the locker. That honestly still haunts me today. Rest in peace, Blake. The second story I'm not too familiar with, only that 3 friends were driving back from somewhere on the highway in a 2-seater coupe. The friend in the middle wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and they got into an accident. However, the guy in the passenger seat moved over to grab the guy sitting in the middle, which saved his life. But he himself was thrown through the glass window several yards and was fatally wounded. His last words were, "I'm sorry," and he died there on the concrete outside of his friend's car. I'm not religious, but for Blake's sake, I hope there is a God, and that one day I'll see him again. But not the Blake I knew in high school. I want to see the Blake I knew in middle school. This one was sort of interesting because a similar thing actually happened in my high school where someone I did personally know died. I wasn't amazing friends with them or anything, but I chose to silently mourn them and stay at school the day while a lot of people across the year group went to attend the funeral because they wanted an early day off school, even though a lot of them didn't actually know him. This will probably get buried, but I have to participate in this. My high school was known in the area for having a sophomore curse, where something awful happened to a sophomore every year. Obviously, that's silly, but it just always ended up being true. The year I was a sophomore, a girl I'd been in school with my entire life, but wasn't close friends with, died of rabies. I heard that she had been bitten by a raccoon while taking out garbage. Also heard that she was uncharacteristically mean and angry a few days before her death. I had always known her to be exceptionally shy and quiet, probably sweet, but I can't say I really knew that. It happened very suddenly. She was out of school for what I heard was the flu, and then maybe a day and a half later, she died. Her parents still release butterflies in our town every year on the anniversary. She was an only child. I wish I had sent them a card or something. The tragedy that was more personal to me, though, was a guy who had died in a car accident. He was driving in the rain and his car flipped over into a creek and he drowned. We were really close. He was 1 year older than me, but we'd been in a program that mixed 2 grades together since first grade. He'd been one of my first boyfriends when that meant making out on marching band trips. And we'd been on school trips to big cities together. The night the accident happened, I had been chatting with him on AOL Instant Messenger when he said he had to go meet our other friends to go see Star Wars. A few hours later, that friend called me asking if I had spoken to him because he'd never shown up. Crazy thing is, I thought absolutely nothing about it at the time. I just figured he got distracted or his mom had decided not to let him go. He was also a very treasured only child, just like the girl from my grade. The next morning, I got to school, and everything was completely quiet. It was so eerie to see no one saying anything, everyone just staring and crying. I walked up to the door of my homeroom already sure that something horrible had happened, but I hadn't made the connection. Another close friend was standing outside the door staring off into space. I asked him what was going on with everyone, and he just said his name died last night, in this chilling monotone. Before I could even form a thought, my mouth was filled with vomit. Not sure why my body reacted that way, but I spent an hour on the bathroom floor sobbing and puking until my mom came to get me. I still can't even write about it without tearing up. Rest in peace to both of those people, but this has just made me think about how lucky I am that I did not have a very close, personal, or important friend, ripped from me at a young age or anything like that. My God. So in my state flowers are illegal to pull out of the ground, but not illegal to buy and plant. Even on private property, you can be fined huge amounts of money per flower removed. Some seniors wanted to pull a prank by planting state flowers on the brand new football stadium field in the shape of 2008. And on top of 2008, they decided to also plant flowers in the shape of a phallic symbol, roughly 35 yards in length. None of them thought to check to see how much each flower would cost to remove. $5,000. The school, which was privately owned, couldn't possibly pay to remove the over 200 flowers the seniors planted, so every football game that season was played on top of a phallic symbol made of flowers. Eventually, someone was willing to break the law in order to remove them, and when we came in on a Monday, they were gone. They even filled the gaps with sod. Also, since then, the law has changed so that all you have to do to remove them is have a state representative present during the process, and you must replant them. So maybe some good came out of it. Also, the seniors were never caught or never announced publicly. That is honestly pretty funny, and I am so glad that I could end this on a slightly more upbeat note. This was kind of hard to read through to some degree, but all of the stories were very interesting and really made me think about stuff.
Redditors who've met the parents/family of the person you intend to marry and then decided against marrying them after meeting them. What happened? I was staying at the girlfriend's parents' house. First morning, father was out feeding animals. Girlfriend and her mother were getting breakfast ready. I saw my girlfriend put what I thought was an artificial sweetener in her father's coffee. I asked if I could try one. She explained to me it was not a sweetener but a chill pill. They kept her father dosed. I decided right there and then I was not going to be part of this family. So, many years ago, I was engaged to a big heaping bowl of crazy. I was also in the military, in a rather selective unit. We had just gotten back from a deployment, and I'll freely admit that I wasn't a ray of sunshine to be around. When we first got back, our training tempo was pretty mild, so we could adjust being back to life in the States. One thing was really weird, though. I'd see her every weekend, and for the weekend and a few days after, I wouldn't be feeling great. I wasn't sick or anything. my mind would just be foggy. Then she decided to move up to where I could see her throughout the week. The fogginess went away for a while, but I'd still be getting these weird things going on with my body. I stopped doing the deed almost completely. I always felt like I was dragging my body. It was really weird because I was young and in phenomenal shape. One week, we had a 3-day-long field exercise towards the end of the week. She was freaking angry, like more angry than I'd ever seen her. She really didn't want me to be gone for that long. Well, tough luck. This is my job. My unit didn't screw around when it came to training. We're talking parachuting in, you sleep in a hole in the ground, lots and lots of patrolling and land navigation, followed by some live fire training in a shooting house. I didn't see her the day prior because I wanted to make sure my gear was set up and get a good night's sleep. I was feeling off, but not too bad the first day. Day 2, I'm a ball of freaking nerves. I didn't know what was wrong, but something wasn't freaking right with my body. On the last day, we were supposed to attack a building with live ammo. We would be clearing rooms and taking down the targets. I was shaking. I couldn't control my hands. I was jittery as heck. I had to pull my team leader aside and show him that I couldn't be trusted to hold a weapon. They drove me from the field to the hospital. I was admitted they started looking for a neurological disorder. After a few days, my symptoms went away and they couldn't find anything, so they let me get back to work. I started seeing my fiancé again and the fog came back. I called my team leader and my first sergeant and I made an appointment to go back to the hospital the next Monday. One morning, the Sunday before I was supposed to go back to the hospital, my fiancé was making me coffee, but got interrupted by her cat doing something. On the counter was a bottle of her dad's sertraline and a small pile of powder. She had been dosing me with antidepressants. I was mad enough to end her right there and then. I had jumped out of an aircraft while on mind-altering substances. If I had tried to tough out the shooting house, I could have hurt someone. Not to mention being on unauthorized medication while holding a security clearance, I thought I was developing a neurological disease because my fiancé was poisoning me. I told my TL and my first sergeant what happened. They cleared it with the rest of the guys. I didn't end up making a criminal complaint. What she did was commit multiple felonies because I just wanted that psycho out of my life as quickly as possible. Her excuse was that she thought I was depressed after coming back from, combat. So she figured she could dose me so I would be happy, not realizing that's not how that crap works. I dodged a freaking Minuteman missile with that lunatic. A guy friend actually convinced me to break up with my boyfriend because of the family trends. My ex's father was always away on business, and his mom was a super cute, bubbly teacher. She would go out with her female teacher friends at night, and the dad would get super jealous and have massive phone fights. My ex and his sibling became super possessive of their mom and hated their dad to an unhealthy level. They thought both their parents were probably having affairs. My ex was 18 and had never done a single chore in his entire life. Their pets crap all over the house, and the mom cleaned everything, even my ex's bedroom. Our mutual guy friend took me to lunch one day and was like, "Seriously? Is this the future you want? I mean, he's a cool guy, but the dude is seriously a terrible boyfriend and will be the worst husband." Turns out he had been cheating on me the whole time with 2 girls that were best friends. They just switch off days they commit the deed with him. I married him anyway, but from the day I met his mom, she hated me. She would rave about how much she adored his brother's girlfriends, but hated me. I tried so hard, but she didn't let up. My husband is her favorite, and she has an unhealthy attachment to him, so I think it's not personal and more along the lines of no girl would ever be good enough for him in her eyes. She's a witch, though. She once faked a severe panic attack to keep her son's attention on her, not me. The doctors at the hospital could see right through it, though, and knew she was faking. She called my husband the night before our wedding and told him if he married me, he would be miserable for the rest of his life. When we went home for Christmas, she tried to hook him up with her coworker, her married son, while I was right there. We rescued a shelter dog, and shortly after he broke a leg due to malnutrition in his neglectful home. She told everyone that I didn't want to pay the vet bill and asked the vet to euthanize him. She laughed at me when she learned I was depressed. She told me I was being dramatic when I started crying after receiving news of my grandpa's passing. She tells everyone that I come from a poor family and married my husband so I wouldn't have to work. I don't work right now because we just moved for his job. In reality, my parents are wealthier than her. She tries to belittle me, but it honestly doesn't bother me at all anymore. I laugh when she does, and it really makes her mad. Intended to marry my ex, but after meeting his mom a few times, I really couldn't do it. She was extremely possessive of her son and never smiled when I'm with them. I was to blame for her son not eating properly. I always cooked healthy food for him, sleeping properly. He worked 16 hours a day. Dressed properly. I ironed his shirts for him when he was too busy to do it. Any blame you can think of. She was also a single mom who has had 2 sons with 2 different ex-husbands and had lots of drama with both. She wanted to retire at 45 but didn't have a stable income. So my ex had to give her money every month so she can retire and not work. All in all, I couldn't see myself dealing with the mom, so I eventually broke it off before it was too late. You know, the more I'm looking at the reasons that the mom is so angry at this wife-to-be, it sounds more like that lemon grab from Adventure Time. It's like, how dare you feed my son vegetables and good meats? This is unacceptable! His mom was incredibly overbearing and controlled what he couldn't do by constant guilt tripping and made up stories. She would drape himself on him for snuggles to the point where it was awkward. I have children of my own, and I don't clasp them to my chest and sigh about how wonderful they are when their friends are over. And she would make sly digs at me all the time. What I was wearing, how I looked, why we were going out, how much money was being spent on me. We always split everything 50-50 at my insistence, by the way, and just generally made me feel like crap. He just took it. When I brought it up, he was just super passive and was like, she's my mom, she's just overprotective. He had a sister, actually, who had left home, but was clearly the favorite. Whenever she came home, he was forgotten and shrugged off to the point where it was actually mean. Again, I brought it up to him and he was all, she's just excited to see her daughter. His dad was a very passive, albeit kind man himself, who just seemed to roll over with whatever his wife wanted, and I guess my boyfriend learned that from him. She was heading for classic MIL from hell territory. There was no talking my boyfriend round. He batted my concerns and feelings on the matter away like they were nothing. I realized that would be our marriage, and I knew I couldn't live that way. It obviously wasn't the only reason I split from him, but it was a key issue. I have no regrets when we split. He very quickly started dating and then married a local girl. They were divorced within 2 years, and from what I could gather from mutual friends, his mother was pivotal in the failure. That's the second one. What's with all these horror stories from moms? Are they all like the stepmother from Cinderella? Yes, good. You'll stay with me for eternity. You'll never find love. Oh no, now I'm just turning to Tim Curry for a second. You'll never find love. We weren't at the marriage stage of things yet. Gay marriage wasn't legal back when this happened. But we had been dating for over a year and were considering moving in together. Apparently, my girlfriend had always used a gender-neutral nickname for my name anytime she talked about me to her family, and she never corrected them when they said he. But after a year of us dating, we were finally going to have a family dinner with them. She had already had dinner with my parents, and they loved her. And when I showed up, her parents had a really sour look in their face. Apparently, she hadn't told them that I am a girl until about 2 hours before the dinner was supposed to happen. Her parents weren't exactly against the idea, just severely disappointed that they wouldn't be getting grandkids. Girlfriend was an only child, and that soured the mood for dinner Honestly, I'm sure they would have come around eventually, but that whole incident told me that my girlfriend wasn't ready to be out of the closet yet. One of the discussions during dinner was, don't tell grandma, and I wasn't going to move in with someone just to be the roommate to most of the people they know. I told her that I'd rather live by myself for now, and she got upset, and we had a fight and ended up breaking up. Dated this girl for 2 years. She was cute, but a little off, as in she would cut herself superficially, then talk about how much better she felt. Whatever, I was 19, and if you look past that, she was great. She was very close to her grandfather. I had met him a few times before. Sweet guy. One day she gets the news that he's dying, so we drive to see him off. Meeting the rest of the family? This is where it gets fun. Her mom didn't strike me as particularly crazy at first, but once I sat down to talk with her, she started getting overly sappy, talking about marriage, but no kids! Kids are the worst thing that can happen to you! Okay. The aunt just wanted to argue with everyone about everything and belittle her grown adult nieces and nephews. Her sister was very obviously a naughty worker and almost always had some illegal substances around the bottom ring of one nostril or the other. She also brought a bouquet that completely filled the tiny hospital room. The lady passing next to Grandpa was not amused. Her brother offered me a slew of illegal substances while I was there. Much appreciated, but calm down, man. And as Grandpa laid there, struggling to hold on to the last threads of life, he got to watch his entire family fall apart, mostly arguing over which of his possessions would go to who. There was also some rumors that Grandpa did an unspeakable act to some of his family members. This made his bedside as well. It was probably the most messed up last days a person has ever experienced. I left early because I couldn't stand it anymore. Too much drama over a dying man. I had been contemplating how to break up with her the following few weeks after all that, when she started hanging out with her manager at work, and after work, getting ride homes with him, and more. And doing the deed. Good riddance. Meeting his family was one of the last straws, and certainly brought up huge red flags. His father was incredibly cruel to him growing up. My boyfriend was an only child that his father never wanted. His dad was obsessive and needy towards his mother, and basically wanted all her attention at all times, and was jealous of the child they had together. I could see some of these obsessive and needy tendencies in my boyfriend, and I knew he didn't want kids, and I did. If we had kids, I was afraid he would react how his father had. Maybe not in a cruel way, but I was still worried. We ended up breaking up for other reasons, but this definitely influenced it. My ex's mom was a round, red-haired, red-faced she-beast who never spoke below a yell. She also had a very unhealthy and incestuous attachment to the son I was dating. I was young and dumb and stayed longer than I should have. She was a huge witch to me and encouraged him to be cruel. But I began to question the relationship when she made him take her bra off for her in front of me. It was a weird display of dominance. Ugh, massive bullet dodge there. So I understand this display of dominance. Yes, it is extremely weird. But I have to admit, the one little detail that is making me giggle is that she never spoke below a yell. What is that like? So are they all sitting at the table and it's like, oh, hey, Mom, do you mind passing the salt? Yes, of course, my beautiful boy. Have some salt. Hey, can you take this off for me? I make her sound like Jerry Seinfeld. I'm a mother now. It's not exactly the reason, but it set us down that path. My longtime girlfriend was a little borderline crazy, little hints of it here and there, but she managed to hide it. I finally went home with her after we got engaged, and her mom would sit in the back at the kitchen table with a little black and white TV playing solitaire, had no friends, complained constantly, isolated herself, and had little flashes of paranoia where the slightest thing was perceived as a major insult that would send her down a day-long sulk session. She also looked kind of like my girlfriend, but did not age well and was pretty heavy. I saw the future. It clicked with me that this was what I was getting into, that my girlfriend harbored all these same traits, both physical and mental, and was working super hard to hide it all. I decided that weekend I need to break it off. Plot twist, as I worked up the courage over the next few weeks, she canceled the wedding because she is a lesbian. Plot twist, I'm gay, she's not. Didn't necessarily intend to marry her, but it was on the table and was where we both wanted to go, I later found out. This girl was completely amazing and my best friend in the world. Unbelievably kind and inquisitive, we fell in love just a couple of months into our friendship and dove headfirst into a relationship once we found out about the other's feelings. It moved very quickly, and I loved every second of it until I met her parents. Her parents were extremely wealthy and extremely weird. Her dad was a high-strung workaholic who seemed to do anything he could to stay away from his family, be it traveling for work or training for marathons. But her mom, oh boy, obsessed with everything vegan and holistic, had a blatant hatred and distrust for anything artificial, especially medication, extremely untrusting, and would flip from hot to cold on a dime. When she found out that the girl I was seeing, the baby of the family, and I were intimate, she began essentially bullying and shaming her for it. She pressured her heavily to give extremely personal and violating details about her personal life, and then would flip her crap when my girlfriend would cave and tell her. She found every possible excuse to shelter her and keep her as her little baby. Mind you, this was in college when I was 22 and she was 21. Eventually, her parents started doing things like dropping in on campus. This was when I was at Penn and her parents were a 15-minute drive away. Calling her to make sure she wasn't sleeping over at my place and guilt-tripping her to stay at home as much as possible to make sure that her 21-year-old daughter wasn't drinking or doing the deed with her boyfriend of about 9 months at the time. I thought it was a me issue and became very depressed, wondering what was wrong with me. But it turned out that it was just the way her mom was with my girlfriend and always had been. Her 3 older sisters were all free to do pretty much whatever, just not her. I couldn't take it anymore. We split. Didn't see another choice. We literally couldn't be together unless she wanted to cut her mom off, which I didn't want her to have to do, and which she didn't want to do either, as it would mean being isolated from her family pretty much, which I would feel completely terrible about. We talked for a while after, and still had strong feelings, but her mom insisted that we stop talking and just let the feelings go. We kept in touch in secret for a while, and her mom continued to keep a death grip on her, telling her if she sealed the deal with a man before marriage again, she would literally be disowned. She had no problem with her other daughters sealing the deal out of wedlock either. I couldn't help but wonder, what the freak is wrong with this woman? Eventually, my ex told me. The reason why her mom was so anti-doctor and such was because she was diagnosed severely bipolar in the 80s and refused to believe it, and decided that all doctors are liars and that medication is the devil, and refused to get any of the treatment she desperately needed. Also clearly has some severe attachment issues. Glad I dodged the bullet of engaging with anything too long-term with this girl. Thoroughly believe her mom would have literally done away with me if I ever proposed.
What is your bullet frickin' dodge story? I had trouble breathing and had been wheezing for a few months. Figured it was just bronchitis that I get all the time, and got some antibiotics. Figured what the hell, I guess I should ask a doctor. You know, the people trained in figuring this stuff out. Found a tumor the size of a pineapple wrapped around my heart and lungs. Jesus Christ of Nazareth. Definitely should have gone earlier, but so glad I actually decided to go. Edit. I'm alive, everyone. Sorry for the delay. Haha. For those commenting about the size of the tumor, it was a little over 5 by 3 inches and went from my trachea to my diaphragm. Double edit. 2.5 years cancer-free. Actually, as of yesterday.
Didn't realize until today. Haha, weird coincidence. At the time, it was not very good. I got to watch my pericardial drain surgery that night because they were afraid the anesthesia would make my trachea collapse. So I got to watch a surgery on myself, awake. Had to be at a 45-degree angle or the weight of the tumor pressed on my lungs, and under nothing except local anest for the catheter site. I like to think it's something not many people can say they've done. Advancing the catheter felt like slowly having the wind knocked out of you, but without the impact. I could actually feel almost exactly where it was as it went. Probably one of the most unique feelings I've ever felt. I could also feel the pop when they pierced my pericardium, and I could feel a very slight pressure relief as they drained the fluid initially.
First of all, I could not imagine being awake for my own surgery, but I guess a man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. And second, I don't know either, but where it's like, pop, I always just think about the bit from Superman versus the Elite. You can almost hear the pop. Lived outside St. Louis in my early childhood, woke up screaming in the worst pain of my life, and then I felt my face get sprinkled with something. I actually got shot in the hip, and when I sat up, a bullet went through my window right where my head was just at, and what sprinkled me in the face was tiny pieces of glass. So I dodged a literal bullet by taking a bullet. Edit. Really expected this to get lost in the sauce, but here are some details someone else asked about. So my bed was right next to my bedroom window, parallel to the wall. The end of the bed where my head was at was right next to the window. The bullet entered the wall and struck me in my left hip, so I guess I was sleeping on my stomach. The windows were real weird now that I think about it. It was actually 2 single-pane pieces of glass separated by 6 inches, and since both of them had a hole in them, you could stick a rod in and see that the bullet traveled right where my head had just been on my pillow. Edit. Another side story connected to this now that I think about those windows. One time I came home from school, I noticed the inner window shattered and there was blood all over the place. Turned out it was my dog that tried to launch herself through the window. We were pretty certain that someone was at my window scoping it out. She was super defensive of all of us. I'm pretty sure this actually occurred after the shooting. Yeah, I'll admit, living in England my whole life, I don't think I could ever feel really, truly comfortable unless I am within a brick house. Not me, but I had a hand in it. Knew this guy in high school peripherally. He was in the cool crowd of rocker-type guys, and I was a nerd. New girl arrived at our school from another town. She and I became friends, and a few months later, she started dating him. At first, she seemed cool, and we would talk about everything. At one point, however, she started talking about how she's been hooking up with her ex-boyfriend behind cool guy's back. Just before the end of the school year, she tells me she's pregnant and that she knows it belongs to her ex-boyfriend. She's laughing and really proud of herself because cool guy is going to do the right thing. Withdraw his college application, go work at the local gas station to support her and the baby. Her ex, the father of the baby, is kind of a loser, so she thinks it's the best thing even that she can screw him while making cool guy support her. I didn't really know this guy that well, but I got his phone number from an acquaintance of mine who knew it. Cool guy knew I was friends with this girl, but was still pretty surprised to hear from me. I told him all about her ploy and said, "Get a paternity test. It isn't yours." This guy was incredibly stoic, but after a sizable pause, he just broke down crying for a few minutes. He then thanked me, they broke up, and cool guy went to college and made something of himself. Just a good old story about bros looking out for bros. Damn girl, how could you even try and do that to cool guy? He's cool guy.
When I was 7, I got lost in Spain without my family. I had been lost for about 5 hours, really late at night, and had been going down some dark alleyways and car parks. I started asking random strangers if they spoke English, but they were only middle-aged men walking around alone. One guy didn't speak English, but he gave me a cuddle and took me back to his house around the corner. At this point, I'm crying my eyes out and just appreciated the help and kindness. When I got to his house, it turned out that he had a family, and the son was learning English in school. He got out his school workbook and asked me my name, and then they took me to the police station. My parents picked me up about 10 minutes later as they were driving around in a police car. That man could have been anyone, and I could have been kidnapped and never seen again. Not your ordinary bullet dodge.
Honestly, that is such a tough call. You're 7 years old in a foreign country and you are dead lost. Oh, God. I mean, I guess, yeah, eventually you'd have to just go, sod it, I'm going to rely on the kindness of strangers, but straight up, I thought that story was going to get a lot worse before it got better. I had my police car pulled over off the side of this rural road with the emergency lights on. I had stopped because there was a man splayed out in the middle of the asphalt. Turns out he was super drunk and decided to take a nap during his walk home. I had just helped him to his feet and placed him in the back of the car to drive him home when I hear an engine revving hard. I closed the car door and straightened up, just in time to have my car smashed out from in front of me by a pickup truck. I felt the truck's side mirror clip my body armor. The driver was drunk and had decided to go looking for his drunk friend. That friend was the guy I just picked up. The guy in the back seat survived the impact because those old Crown Victorias had massive trunks. The driver went to the hospital, and in the coming months he pled guilty for impaired driving. I remember the collision analysis showed the guy hit my car at 145 kilometers an hour. It was a wild night, and I still have major hang-ups when I have to stop my police car on roadways.
I have a good amount of respect for police. I don't think every cop is on the up and up, but if you've ever seen any of those like body cam footage things where stuff just hits the fan, my God, police, especially police in America, go through some wild stuff.
New teachers started at my high school at the start of the year, integrated fine. Students were assigned a pair of teachers to pay special attention to their academic needs. He was one of mine. Because of this, he knew I had a tense relationship with my parents. Because of the occasional sensitive material we covered in his English class, which I also took, he knew I had a telling sensitivity to sexual violence. As a teacher, he knew I was a troubled kid with a shaky support network. He gave me off-base but evidently well-intentioned advice about managing my controlling parents, worked with me and my other overseeing teacher to try and make school less nightmarish for me, and overall seemed like a warm, engaging guy. He gave some people the willies, but I felt fine around him. Then, middle of the week, a few months into the year, he doesn't show up. We're told he's not employed here anymore. No official details. As you maybe guessed, turned out he had an alleged history of sexually abusing students at past jobs. I don't know how it had been handled that they were able to find this out without him having tripped any of the flags I assume exist in the screening for potential teachers, but I guess better late than never. I don't think the school ever got, prosecuted for screwing up or whatever, so I guess it was an understandable miss. But yeah, that would have been pretty freaking awful. I got lucky. Me and any other kids, he might have been charming. For the sake of keeping it fresh on the first take, I was going in with a wizard voice, and then I kind of went, I don't think I want to use the wizard voice on this anymore. It got a little dark.
Dated this guy briefly in college. He got into a horse riding accident early on in the relationship. Horse fell on him, broke his ankle, pelvis, and hip. Apparently had a prior addiction to pain pills I was completely oblivious to. He quickly relapsed and turned into a crazy pill-popping psycho. Tried sticking out and helping him. I did my best and I couldn't handle it. When I told him I was done with the relationship, he proceeded to call me the worst names in the world, begged me to forgive him, and then tried asking me to come hang out after he had called me the biggest harlot in town. WTF. He then started doing harder stuff and has been involved in a hit-and-run accident. The guy he hit died. X moved the body, fled the scene, dumped his truck in a car park that had surveillance cameras in it. He did get caught for it. Talk about a bullet dodged. I've had some pretty crappy relationships, apparently.
I think this is quite exemplary of the downward spiral that drugs can take you in. I mean, this dude was apparently riding horses one day, and then he's doing hit and runs and dumping bodies and stuff. Seriously, kids, stay away from hardcore drugs. God. I met him on one of those sites that isn't just a dating site, but is a dating site to find someone who shares your particular interests, and we seemed compatible enough to meet. I much prefer talking face-to-face, so once I see someone might be interesting, I generally set up a face-to-face date right away. We decided to meet halfway and we'd figure out where to eat once we were there. So we met in the parking lot and I got in his car and he drove us around until we found a restaurant we both liked. We sat down and immediately he started chatting. He was fairly charming about it, but it got really creepy really quick because he seemed to move the conversation onto every person I interacted with. And once he established how close I was to them, how often I saw them, texted them, talked to them, it's like he would look satisfied for a moment and then move on to the next. It's hard to really explain, but I would tell a story about me and a friend and he would ignore every part of the story and just go straight to questioning me about my friend. The only thing he seemed interested about them was how often I interacted with them. Like, for example, stuff like this. Him. Are you guys close? Me. Fairly. Him. How often do you hang out? Me. A few times a week. He nods and brings the conversation to coworkers, asking me what my boss was like. Was I always on time?
And he just did that over and over. I mentioned my parents, and he wants to know if I'm a good girl who goes to see them every weekend, if I talk to my mom or dad on the phone every night. I mean, he would bring it in with stories and from a teasing tone, but he did it over and over with every person I mentioned interacting with. It got creepy, and I was freaking out in the back of my head, and it was getting really hard not to get up and just leave. Awkwardness scares me more than getting kidnapped, though, and having to call someone to give me a ride because I thought the guy was interviewing me to be his next victim just sounded nuts in an already intense situation for me. I just started lying my butt off, so I mentioned brothers. He, of course, asked how many. I said 5 and started going into vivid detail about how overprotective they are, how they check in on me constantly, how one is a cop, the other is a private investigator, etc. I also mentioned how my friends make me do a safety call. Either I was paranoid or it worked because he did take me back to my car and I got to drive away and never contact that guy again. I figure if the guy was casing my life out, those would be red flags for him.
I'm not gonna lie, I would probably have the exact same thought process as this person. It takes even less than that for me to stop and consider whether or not my date or someone in my general vicinity is plotting my downfall at any time.
Back in my raving days in the early 2000s, before it got trendy, I got deep into e-use and subsequently became a small-time dealer. Small-time over the course of a few months rapidly became pretty big. One night after re-upping, buying more Scooby snacks to sell, I went over to my buddy's house to play Counter-Strike until the early hours of the morning. On my way home, I got pulled over. I had 2,500 green triangle Scooby snacks in my trunk. I pulled out my license and registration, laid it out on my lap before the cop came to my window and proceeded to be as polite as possible. The cop asked me why my eyes were red and asked if I smoked the ganja. I said absolutely not. I never liked the ganja. Weird, I know. And I told him we were playing Counter-Strike for an 8-hour-plus session, and that's probably why. He ran my license, which was clean, came back to my car and said, "Okay, drive safely and let me go." I left that scene bricking it. Had he looked in my trunk, I would have been arrested and looking at a distribution felony and at least 12 to 25 years. Not to mention, it would have destroyed my life. I stopped dealing and raving after that. Today, I have a lovely wife, my own home, good health, thriving business, healthy toddler, and another one on the way. Talk about bullet dodged. My life and the life of those I love would have been drastically different if it played out the other way. It should have. I am the lucky one. I lose sleep often thinking about that. Edit. Wow, thanks for all the encouraging words and upvotes. For those of you who are critical of my choice to slang E, you need to realize that my customers were all adults with free will. Some prominent doctors, lawyers, teachers, etc. The choices we all make in life, and the consequences of those choices fall on us, period. I didn't make the drugs or import them. I didn't force anyone. I've actually cut people off many times. And today's society is frankly too quick to blame everyone else but the person, ourselves. Stop that. For those saying I got a lucky pass and need to pay it forward, I totally agree. My life changed from that day on.
Now, I don't have that much respect for drug dealers by any means, but I am happy that this person is keeping their nose clean now and living a decent life. I really agree with the sentiment about personal responsibility. That is an issue that I think a lot of people really don't understand anymore. You just got to think about your actions, how it will impact you, how it might follow you in the future before you do something. Go watch the Back to the Future trilogy. That's basically the core of that entire thing. How your actions, how your decisions can have a terrible outcome in the future. Well, just recently I had a job offer, which never felt right in my gut. After the initial excitement of actually getting an offer wore off, I was feeling kind of meh towards the position, but figured I could do it for a year or two since it would potentially allow for a better quality of life. However, when reading the contract, so many warning bells went off in my head. My husband works in employment and labor law, so I had him review the contract. The first words out of his mouth last night were, "Don't sign that contract as it is." Some highlights include, keep in mind I work in K-12 education, not some extremely secretive cutthroat industry, a 1-year no-compete clause for any tangentially related position in the entire county, which, keep in mind, has the largest school district. 60 days written notice if I were to leave, not crazy at first, but good luck getting a new job over the summer, which is when most schools post positions. If I decided not to return after signing a contract,
contract, I'd have to reimburse all insurance benefits starting from July 1st, 2017. Not sure if these are standard in other industries, but I've never seen anything like this as a teacher. Basically, it would make it close to impossible to leave the job, and I could potentially be screwed so many ways if I did. If this was what was in the contract, what could the work environment be like? Just sent off my thanks but no thanks email to the director with the school year quickly approaching. Looks like I'll be back at my current employer.
Read your contracts, kids. I know I don't. No, I pay other people to read them for me. The city was doing road construction in front of our place about 3 years ago. It was annoying, noisy, and covered everything with fine dust. During this time frame, my son ended up catching some sort of bug, or so we thought, that seemed a lot worse at night. 3 nights in a row, he ended up jumping out of bed after throwing up all over the place and having diarrhea. It was awful. We would spend hours just rubbing his back and cleaning him up. I would then put him to bed in the spare bedroom and he would pass out completely exhausted. After the 3rd night, I went on a cleaning spree and was basically scouring the hell out of everything to get the sick air out of the house, when I discovered that damn dust from the road construction was coating everything with this grimy blackish residue that was incredibly hard to remove, or what I thought was road dust. I was irate enough that I took a pic and posted it on Facebook and was whinging about the construction and asking if anyone else was having the same issue. A couple hours later, I get a message from a friend that asked if we had an oil furnace. I thought it was odd, but just said that yes, we do, and asked why she asked. She then proceeded to tell me that all her ceiling fans and vents, etc. looked exactly like my pic did when her furnace filter got clogged and wasn't burning off the oil properly, which in turn filled her house with carbon monoxide. I totally went into preservation mode and packed everyone into the truck and drove around the corner to the fire station. Firemen came in their trucks with their carbon monoxide detectors, and sure as hell the basement was highly toxic and was filling the house. My son's room is directly above the furnace room, and when the heat was kicking in at night, he was getting poisoned. We are all lucky to be alive, especially my boy. Our landlord installed carbon monoxide detectors 2 days later after the house aired out and the furnace guy did his repairs. Scary stuff, kids. So I actually do laboring. I've never done road work before, but God, I can only imagine how bad the road dust is for you. But I did a lot of soft strip demolition work, really. And when I was working like 10-hour shifts a day, I would do like 50-hour weeks or something like that, just moving stuff around for these guys. Loads of people would not wear their mask when it's like we've just been breaking down walls and there's loads of construction dust everywhere. And obviously as a voice actor, I want to protect my voice and everything. But I would just know all these guys that would take 12 smoke breaks a day or something, probably more, and still just be breathing in this dust because they didn't want to wear a mask. And I'm like, dude, you are ridiculous. Your lungs are going to be messed up in the future. Whew, I'm so glad that the story didn't end in tragedy, but that's why it's a bullet dodge story. I told this to my dental hygienist recently and she thought it was funny, so here you go. My friend owned this camp in the mountains. When it wasn't in season, he brought a bunch of friends up to hang out. So it's very late at night and he goes to get some people at the front entrance and leaves me and another friend alone. We decide to do the zip line over this pond. As my friend is explaining to me, you're going to feel a yank after you jump off. I just tell him, go and I'll see what you're talking about. He goes and looks awesome. Now keep in mind, it's pitch black outside, so I ready myself and jump. I feel the little hitch he was talking about, but something isn't right. As I conclude that something indeed isn't right, it feels like I get hit with a pickup truck in the back. I was falling about 25 feet without even knowing and landed perfectly on my back in about 1.5 feet of water. The rope snapped. Any other rotation would have left me severely injured or dead. My friend thought I died, but I got up and met him around the corner. My back looked like I had been shot point blank with about 50 paintballs. Other than that, I was fine. Well, that is some divine luck. Like, they didn't even realize they were falling. It was that dark. God damn, they are one lucky SOB. I was in Windhoek, Namibia doing the post-college wanderer thing. I was hitting the bars when I randomly bumped into an Australian guy I'd met a few weeks earlier in Harare, Zimbabwe. Harare is an epic crapburg, so there's nothing to do but get drunk and wait for your flight/bus out while you regret your decision to visit Harare. This Australian dude was my companion on the drinking, waiting, and regretting part, but we were going to different cities and parted ways when we left. So we randomly meet again in Windhoek and quickly decide that we need to get smashing drunk, just like 3-week-old times. Namibia is a great place to get drunk in mostly safe streets, the animus and energy of African nightlife, and relic German colonial predilection for extraordinary beer. As we're at the bar getting blasted out of our minds on 35 varieties of Namibian lagers, this gal comes up and starts flirting with me. She's smoking hot, great conversation for a couple hours, and she ends up asking if I want to come back to her place. I hadn't gotten laid in months and was 22 years old, feeling frisky as hell, but I said no. Something just didn't seem right. I tell my buddy that I'm going to call it a night and go back to my hostel. He asks if I minded if he made a go at the girl. I tell him sure, but something seems weird about her. I go back and pass out. I woke up with a screaming hangover the next day and spend the entire day in bed. I spend a couple more days in Windhoek, 10 out of 10 town by the way, highly recommend, but don't come across him again. I didn't expect to, so no big deal. I buy a ride west across the desert to Swakopmund and spend a few days hanging out there, and I run into my friend looking like a wreck. Turns out the chick took him back to her place, got him blackout drunk, took literally everything he owned except for the clothes he was wearing, and ditched him 3 miles outside the city in the desert. He tried to hitchhike his way back to the hostel but didn't know where he was and ended up on the back of a pickup truck going the wrong direction, depositing him in Swakopmund. Really glad I let my brain overrule my one-eyed monster in that situation. It doesn't happen often, but I'm glad when it does. Dodged a bullet. Now, I won't go into detail, but as a gentleman who has taken some pretty big risks in some cases, this Australian dude is just on another level. He's either more daring or more naive than I am, because I would never go with someone that I didn't really trust in a foreign country that I didn't speak the language in, to a location that I'm unaware of or anything like that. Hell, I'm surprised that they would just go wandering like that and then just get absolutely trashed, because man, anyone could take advantage of you, really.
People, what is your craziest, most interesting, I need a favor, no questions asked story? Can I stand here and speak to you like we know each other? A girl was leaving a wedding reception alone from a cruise boat I worked on. I was on shore as passengers were leaving, and she came up and asked me this. I told her absolutely and jumped right into the role. She gave me a big hug and said how good it was to see me. Around then, I kept a smile on my face, but asked if something was wrong. As it turned out, there was another guest at the reception making her uncomfortable. She said he hadn't done anything specific, it was just a bad feeling. But she didn't want to go pointing him out or accusing him of anything. She just wanted to see him go to his car and leave before she went out to the lot. Once that happened, we chatted another few minutes before she was on her way. I cannot deny that it is good to go with your gut feeling in situations like this. If you've watched Patch Adams, you know. Like this person said, they didn't accuse this person of anything directly or even feel like they did anything specific, but your life is in your hands at the end of the day based on the decisions that you make. If you wanted to go about it that way, go ahead. Not me, but a family member. He was USAF with a number of people under his command and stationed in Nevada IIRC. In the middle of the night, one of his guys shows up on his porch, banging on his door as if his life depended on it. "Sir, I done messed up. I need your help to fix it. Can you come with me?" With nothing more than saying, "Son, whatever it is you need, we'll get you through it." He dons his dungarees and gets in the guy's car, and they drive off into the dead of the night. He notices they're headed out of town into the desert in the pitch black of night. He tries to get the driver to talk, and the guy just sort of breaks down. "I had an argument with my woman, so I drove her out into the desert and left her there. I done messed up. They'll boot me out for sure after this." The boss is doing his best to keep the guy calm, reassuring him he's going to come out of this okay. Outwardly, he's serene, but he's getting more and more anxious by the minute. They drove further and further into the desert, finally pulling off-road. They get out and the guy goes into his trunk, hands over a flashlight and points his boss towards where he left the girl. Boss starts calling out, hoping the girl was nearby, and turns to ask the airman for his girl's name. While turning, the beam of his flashlight hits the guy, and all the tumblers scarily clicked into place. The airman was carrying a shovel. In the heat of an argument, the airman strangled his gal to death and drove her out into the desert in a state of panic over what he'd done. So he went to the one guy he knew could help him set things to right, his boss. His boss that somehow now found himself helping to dig a shallow grave and trying to seem supportive. After all, here he was in the desert with a killer. Nobody knew where he was, and certain death awaited at the hands of this guy or those of Mother Nature if he couldn't keep a cool head. The officer was smart about it. He convinced the airman to bury her shallow so the scavengers could come and clean up. And so the job only took a few minutes. They go back to the car and he casually manages to leave the shovel stabbed upright into the roadside to mark the location. On the drive back into the city, the airman is almost euphoric, relieved. The boss keeps reassuring him all the way back into town, just waiting to get out of the danger zone that is the desert. As they pull into the city, the boss has his airman pull into an all-night drive-in diner and then pays for burgers, fries, and shakes. When the meal's almost done, he tells the kid,
"You know what you've got to do, son. You know I can't do it for you."
The guy kind of nods, walks over to the payphone, and calls the cops to confess. Yeah, the instant that they said, left her in the desert, I was just like, oh man, she dead. I was 17 and my father and mother traveled to the countryside for their 21st wedding anniversary. A few hours after they left, I got a call from my father saying he needed me to do something for him. The serious tone he used made me say, sure, absolutely, without knowing what he was about to ask. He told me to go out to the front where there would be a wrapped present on the foot of the driveway. He told me not to open it, look around to see if anybody was watching, then put it in my car and drive it to a commercial waste dumpster up the road and throw it out. I then had thoughts like, is my father a drug dealer? And has he gotten himself in trouble with some gang? I asked what the hell was going on and he just reiterated that he needed me to do this for him without any questions or opening the gift. I did exactly as he asked. I picked up the gift, made sure nobody was watching, and threw it out into the appropriate dumpster. I never found out exactly what was in that box and never opened it. However, shortly after, my mother became suspicious of him having an affair. After, my father denied it, but his story unraveled over time. He was found by my mother in bed with another woman. My mum, shortly after, attempted self-deletion. They then both involved myself and my brother in painful attempts of pitting us against one parent or another. I later found out the box almost certainly just contained pictures of my father banging his mistress, whom he is now married to. I don't speak to my parents much anymore and moved interstate. I'm not sure if this person is English or not based on the way they wrote mum, M-U-M, and the talk of the countryside makes me go, oh, this person's totally freaking English, but like, then they mention moving interstate and I'm like, oh, they're American? Or maybe they're an English person who lives in America. Pretty minor considering some of the other stories here, but I have one. During the Dark Knight Rises premiere, me and my friend were close to the front of the line. Our theater was the only showing for the next 2 hours, as the other room had broken down. The people in that line were told that if there was any room left in ours, they'd be allowed in. Slim chance to none, so we start going in, and this guy at the front of the other line looks desperate. We lock eyes, and he gives me a questioning nod. I nod back, knowing what he wants. He walks straight up to me with a big smile on his face and says, "Hey man, how have you been?" I respond immediately with, "Max, good to see ya. Glad you could make it. I'm good, you?" I have no idea if that's his name, but he looks like a Max and he rolls with it. And from there we launch into small talk and shoulder claps as he walks in with me and my friends under the suspicious eye of the usher. As soon as we're in, he veers off and tells me he owes me one. My friends patiently wait until he's out of earshot and ask me who the heck was that. I shrugged and said, no idea. When the movie ends and we walk out, we see each other, and this time he's with a girl. He hurries over to me and says he got a date with the girl and that this is the best night ever. If I ever need anything, he's my man. Never saw him again. Max was a cool guy. I hope his date went well.
Max does indeed sound like a cool guy. He deserves to be happy.
And it was very nice of that guy to, like, I don't know, give that guy a hand, I guess. It's kind of funny the things that can happen from, like, a telling look or something, or just like a mutual understanding in a single glance. While we were hanging out, my best friend got a call from his girlfriend. Now, she hardly let him out of her sight on any given day, so having some free time to sit around, chat, and play up some games had become a vanishingly rare commodity. But now, on this particular day, she really needed him. She didn't have a car and needed him to drive her and take her somewhere right away. He went, of course. She told him she needed to go to an interview with a college she'd applied for and had forgotten about it, and she needed a ride. My friend took his girlfriend an hour away to the college, called me to chat, and picked her up again a few hours later. It turned out later that she had him drive her to the campus, cheated on him with another guy at a place a few blocks away, and then had her boyfriend drive her home after she slept with this other dude. And that was the story of how my best friend realized he was in a failing relationship. No, wait, he stayed with her 4 more months and rented a place next door to be closer to her before she broke up with him the next day after he moved in. in because my friend was in love and she wasn't. That is absolute top-tier harlot behavior. I mean, using your boyfriend as a key instrument in the process of cheating on him is downright nasty.
Been waiting for a chance to share this one. Earlier this year at around 1 a.m. on a Wednesday morning, I get a call from a friend who lives nearby. He was in a total panic and the only words he could get out to me were, "Dude, open the gate and turn off all the outside lights. Hurry!" Half asleep, I ask him if this is some kind of prank, because you know us guys, fool with each other every now and then. He responds with, "Just effing do it." I decide to comply, still in my boxers, turning off the outside lights. Now, just to add some detail, my house is right next to a traffic circle, so I go outside to the gate to see what's going on, and to my amazement, my friend comes speeding the wrong way around the circle. Halfway into making the turn, he turns off all his lights, turns off the car, and rolls into my driveway through my gate at a serious speed, shouting out the window, "Close the goddamn gate!" About 5 seconds later, I see a police car come speeding by, sirens and lights and everything. As I look back to his car, he emerges with a victoriously smug look on his face, shirt and pants covered in vomit, steering wheel covered in vomit, and the smell of Stro rum making my eyes water. He looked at me, I looked at him, he nodded, I nodded. He asked to use my shower and sleep over. 5 weeks later, he totaled his car, drunk driving, and lost his job because he couldn't get to work anymore. Been sober ever since.
And I truly believe it is honestly probably for the best that friend stay the hell off the road.
I used to work at a college and somehow was talked into becoming a sponsor of one of the local fraternities. No Greek letters attached to this frat. It was basically just a bunch of dudes who pulled their extra cash and were legit as far as the small school is concerned. After acting as an adult sponsor for about a year, hell, I was only 24 at the time, I get a late night call from one of the frat members saying, "We're screwed. There is a dude in the house with a piece and he won't leave." I'm kinda drunk and don't really want to get involved. I tell him to call the cops, but he's worried because if the cops come, we will all get expelled. He was probably right. It was a small private Christian school. So I say, fine, I'll be there in 20 minutes. I walked across the apartment complex and knocked on Malcolm's door. Malcolm was a gangbanger from way back who, I can say this because I am confident in my heterosexuality, is the perfect specimen of a man. Over 6 foot, over 200 pounds, and simply shredded with muscles. I tell him the problem and he says, "Cool, let's go." 10 minutes later, we walk into the party. I ask who the dude causing problems was, find out and point him out to Malcolm. Malcolm walks up to the dude and says, "You need to go." Dude looks up, sees Malcolm and says, "Yeah, man, I was just leaving." The frat took a collection the next day and paid Malcolm's rent for the next 3 months. Malcolm was a bad mother. Maybe it's because they're just good Christian boys at a small Christian school, but it's kind of lazy that they had to call a dude to get one other dude to remove another dude from their party. I don't know how many people are usually to a fraternity. Like, naturally, I don't know. I wasn't there, but the situation just seemed handleable.
A friend who I hadn't heard from in a while calls me up saying he needs $200 and he'll give me $250 by the end of the week. He has his own business and owns houses, so I'm like, yeah, sure. Sure enough, at the end of the week, I get my $250. A week later, he asks for $600 and he'll give me $700 back. Seeing as he paid me back on time the first time, I'm like, sure, why not? A week goes by, no money. 3 months go by, with me calling him once in a while, etc. No money, and he's not picking up anymore. So I go, screw it. I go to his place, call him from my girlfriend's cell phone, and he picks up and says, yeah, he's home. I go to the building he owns where he used to live. He comes over all confused. I ask him for the money. He says all he can give me is $400. This avoiding bullpucky goes on for another 2 months. I go, screw it. Go back to his place again. Says he got robbed or some bullcrap. I think he stopped the chronic and started doing the hardest stuff, to be honest. Anyways, I agree to take his spear launcher, an estimated worth of $600, as collateral for the remaining $300, and while I have not seen him in a long time, I still have the launcher.
Now, it may be debatable whether or not this transaction was actually worth it. You got 4 to 5 months of having to track and nag and follow up this dude for money, but in the end, you got a spear launcher, and cold hard cash is good, but a spear launcher is forever.
Kinda silly, but I was at work one day commuting from home in a New York suburb to New York City, and my dad called me. He says, I need a favor, pick up a copy of the most recent Playboy on your way home, okay? I'll pay for it. I asked him, why? And he told me that sometimes when he asks me for things, I should just frickin' do them. Not angry, we're jokers. Turns out there was an article about someone in the wine business that he wanted to read. It was just a bonus that he could confuse the hell out of me in the process. Edit. I can't find the article online, but it was during Rudy Kurniawan's scandal. Check him out. It was apparently a big thing in the wine world, and my dad had done some work with him in the past. Though it would be hilarious if he just wanted the magazine, he did have a real excuse. Now, I don't know about the rest of you lot, but I truly believe that this man's father deceived him and simply wanted a sneaky peek at some Playboy bunnies. I live in a sketchy town with a lot of crime and homeless people. It's practically impossible to exit your apartment without seeing someone homeless. However, they're generally nice, and therefore I'm nice to them too. A few greet me when I walk by because I give them my leftovers sometimes. Well, one particular hobo and I are good friends. By friends, I mean we talked that one time when I was going home from a frat party and he told me I was eyed. Anyway, he saunters up to me one night when I was walking home and asked me to do him a favor. He wanted me to take another route home, but didn't explain why. Now, I typically don't follow instructions from the homeless in the middle of the night, but something in my gut told me to listen to him. Probably because for the first time since I've seen him, he looked sober. So I did. The next day, I heard by word of mouth that a woman was graped minus the G. I don't remember if it was also a murder or not on the route that I was going to take. That woman could have been me. I never saw Hobo Bro again after that. Now, there are two reasons why you may have never seen Hobo Bro again, and that's all I'm going to say on the matter.
About a year ago, my roommate asked me to squeeze her boob as hard as I can. I asked her why. She told me to just do it, so I obliged her, and she just stands there with her eyes closed for 5 seconds and then runs out of the apartment door giggling. She denies it ever happened now.
Well, I really don't know what to say, dude, except girls, women, they can be pretty weird sometimes. I thought that this was just going to lead up to her asking you to check for a cancer lump or something. When I was 14, I was spending an unproductive summer vacation day watching TV. I was alone and was somewhat annoyed to hear a desperately loud knock at my door. As I unlocked the door, my best friend at the time rushes in and nearly pushes me over in the process. He was helping his grandma and attempted to skateboard home when diarrhea struck. This guy comes into my house and absolutely destroys my bathroom. It was one of the worst experiences of my life, not to mention his life. But the guy literally didn't ask, and he didn't need to do so. Human beings should let other human beings poop with impunity, unless it's dysentery or something. Now, I say, the poop with impunity is man's truest and greatest right, passed down from God himself. My friend and his wife were raging snow snorters for almost 20 years. They have both been clean for 3 years, and at this point, his prostate cancer has returned after being in remission for several years. He had heart surgery about 3 months ago. A few weeks ago, he asked me if I could do him a huge favor. I told him, of course, because he was there for me when I was completely down and out and unconditionally gave what little he had when no one else could be bothered. He said, you don't even know what I'm going to ask you yet. I told him that whatever he needed, I'd make it happen. Turns out he and his wife just wanted to ride to Hackensack, New Jersey, so he could buy her a wedding ring. They've been married over 20 years and due to their drug habit have been repeatedly pawned and ultimately sold off their wedding rings. Now they're clean and I feel they believe he doesn't have much time left. He wants her to have her wedding ring. I drove them last week. He couldn't get his legs in the car without help. After they went in and picked out the purchased rings, he couldn't get out of the car to get lunch and pick up the rings when they were ready an hour later. It was a huge effort for him to take that ride and walk without his wheelchair. He spent all his savings on that set of rings. I took a few hours from work and we had a picnic in a park in Hackensack. It wasn't a favor or an inconvenience. I felt lucky they asked. When you're bereft of good health, it's a good thing if you have good friends to make the short time that you have as wonderful as possible. A friend asked me to store some cooking equipment and related supplies. Bowls, pans, cooking utensils, some wine, whatnot. Turns out he'd been getting some as a kind of bonus from his boss. Except his boss's boss wasn't aware of this, and then the police got involved. Felt zero guilt. Got a nice $500 bottle of wine out of it. Then my brother's alcoholic girlfriend drank it one night. Doesn't even remember it. Just wanted more stuff to get her drunk. I will never forgive her. Edit.
Since this is supposed to be a no questions asked story, I do have to admit that I did ask one question when he said he needed me to store these things, including wine. I have a spot, but it's not refrigerated. Is that okay? To this day, he still chuckles about how that was the only part of this favor that I was concerned about. Edit 2. I know some people are probably curious as to what exactly the deal was, so here's a more detailed explanation that I got after the fact. My friend was a chef at a high-end 4-star restaurant. Now, at a place like this, they are really serious about both health codes and presentations, so the amount of equipment they went through monthly was pretty significant. Scratch a mixing bowl, chuck it. Dent in a saucepan, chuck it. Even the slightest blemish on something the customer would see, it's gone. A lot of this stuff wound up with the staff at their homes. That wasn't all of the stuff that wound up at their homes. But the point is more that it's not like this stuff wandering off was really eating into the bottom line. Or at least, that's what my friend and most of the rest of the staff thought. Now, on his own, he probably wouldn't have taken much of anything home past the odd dented, scratched dish and whatnot, but his boss openly encouraged staff to use the employee equipment discount for basic stuff and even the occasional bottle of wine when an employee really stepped up during a busy night or something else. The boss did the same himself, so nobody thought much of it. Flash forward a few months, and one night the boss is mysteriously absent. Eventually, they come to find he's down at the police station being interviewed on suspicion of felony theft. Everyone on staff is thinking this is a huge overreaction on some upper level person's part, an attempt to scare the staff straight and kill off the employee equipment discount bonus in one go. Then they got more details. So at the time, my friend had taken a total of 6 of those bottles of wine and thought that was probably abusing things a bit. His boss had taken whole cases of wine. My buddy had maybe 8 creme brulee dishes. The boss had a few dozen. Pick an example of something my friend thought was on the border. The boss had 5 to 20 times as much, and that was just over the last year. So long story still long, they quickly realized that the police investigation was legitimate, and they were all likely accomplices. A few people panicked and tossed all their stuff. Some, like my friend, decided to hide it until things were a bit less crazy. Importantly, nobody talked. So only the boss went down for it.
Damnable sticky-fingered gremlin boss giving me random crap and trying to take me down with him. That would suck so hard. Don't know how familiar you guys are with how underage college parties work, but when the police bust in, usually for a noise complaint, nothing happens. But my buddy was at a party at one of our more sketchy friends' houses, and the police bust in, find booger sugar, and the 3 to 4 cops start trying to process and arrest the whole party. He is luckily in the back. They haven't seen him yet, so he texts me saying to come to that house in a specific spot. Turn my lights off and text him. So I do, and I watch him leap out of a second-floor window and run into my car. And upon seeing the 2 cop cars as I drive off, I ask my first question. That being, what in the figgity-uck? He gave me a bottle of Grey Goose for my trouble. That's a pretty good friend to give you a bottle of Grey Goose for your trouble. My first question would be, where was my invitation to this party? Got a call from a friend at 4 a.m. one night declaring that he needed some help. We both lived in the same dorm at the time, and I figured he was just trying to get in without being seen by the resident assistant drunk, because we were both underage at the time. My groggy butt didn't ask any questions and went down to the side door to let him in. He wasn't there though. I looked around, called his name a couple times, smoked a cig, and went back inside because it was cold as Santa's balls outside. I tried calling him again to no avail and ended up going to his room to see if his roommate knew where he was. Turns out he was in there, naked, handcuffed to the bed with a gag around his neck that he spat out. I laughed so hard I woke the neighbors up, and then they laughed with me. We let him out and he proceeded to tell us this story of this fine woman getting all frisky on him and handcuffing him to a bed. Apparently she was on top, and right before he got lucky, she hopped off, laughed at him, and told him to figure it out when he asked how he was getting out. That's when he laid there for what he said was 3 hours trying to get his phone from his desk at the foot of the bed to his face so he could call. Felt bad for him, but never letting him live that one down. Life's a matter of perspective, and I would much rather be this dude than the guy that got stranded in a desert in the dodged a bullet video I recorded. I'm just gonna say that.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.